you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 12th part of What If Deku Helps His Best Friend, Peter Parker. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Let it be known that Yu was ready for a lot of things. Well, at least she thought she was ready for a lot of things. When she took it upon herself on taking an award, she was concerned. Yeah, she wasn't an idiot. It was going to be hard, but at the end of the day, it could be boiled down to simple stuff. School trouble, girl trouble, and a few other things, and the rest she could throw Peter to Shinji if he really wanted answers. What she was not ready for was for her ward to walk in one night, say that he'd gotten his AI friend out of his suit, and revealed that said AI was currently running through everything with an internet connection in the apartment complex, and was looking out via facecam on Peter's laptop, combined with a window of a symbol with an arrow across it, and a line that moved whenever this Karen talked. Creepy, invasive, but on a completely unrelated note, the Wi-Fi has never been faster. So, you started running her finger along the edge of her water glass. You're an artificial intelligence named Karen. Correct, the synthetic voice said from the TV speakers, speaking in crystal clear Japanese. You came from one of Peter's suits, which was given to him by his mentor, who I can guess was a very smart and intelligent pro-hero. Correct, you're a super AI capable of what? Taking over the world. Such actions are not compatible with my programming. The voice said, it would also be too easy with this nation's pitiful levels of security. You froze, her glass halfway to her lips. That was a joke. And no, I knew, totally knew. Haha. You could practically feel the AI judging her behind the laugh. Then Peter looked up from his supper and you wished her power was shrinking instead of growing. Peter hasn't stopped grinning like a kid on Christmas morning since he got home. Looking back, you hadn't seen him this happy in a long time. The only thing that came close was his acceptance letter into UA, and that was still leagues behind. Putting his tools down, Peter joined you at the kitchen table. They were having leftovers, mostly cause you didn't want to cook, and Peter was too busy to even think about cooking. But anyway, what's this about service hours? You asked. Shouldn't you be focusing on your internship and hero studies? This is a bit out of the blue. Peter shrugged, digging into the Thai food. Well, I figured I'd get a jump start on being a hero and helping the community. It's what I did back home before I came to Japan. Plus it gets me out of the house and doing things, and outside of Japanese which I can learn with Karen and English just because. Peter paused as he sipped some water. School is relatively easy. Plus, I still have a few days to kill before we actually focusing on internships, so might as well get out of the house and help people to pass the time. He stopped, eyeing her with a nervous glint in his eye. Though I've got to get registered at the service office. Mind giving me a ride before your shift tomorrow? I can walk back home once I'm done. Oh, sure, you said. Course that would mean waking up earlier than normal. Goodbye a full night of beauty sleep. You knew thee well. I can calculate the fastest route to ensure that you get to work on time, Mrs. Takeyama. Yu's eye twitched. Thanks, but could you not call me Mrs. Takeyama? It makes me feel old. I never meant to insinuate anything. You blinked. Was that sarcasm? From a machine? What the hell was happening right now? However, statistically speaking, it continued, considering your profession as a hero, you would fall under the category of. In my golden years, you interrupted, a sickeningly sweet smile creeping over her features. I see, forgive me, my visual sensors must have glitched. You couldn't believe what she was hearing. She was getting sassed by a computer program. A program that could probably destroy her reputation within 1 or 2 seconds. But that wasn't the point here. You slumped in her seat, trying not to look too annoyed as she ate. Peter awkwardly hid behind his glass. So, you guys are getting along. You perked up. Oh, I'm fine, just processing everything. You really know how to throw everything in the kitchen sink at a girl, don't you? She said with her hands on her hips. Peter took a long drink after that. Awa, poor kid was embarrassed. Finishing up, Yu's eyes drifted over to the bundled mess that was the notes for Peter's new mask. How about you clean up your work? I'll get the kitchen tonight. Oh, sure, Peter said, pushing out his chair and grabbing his laptop, and going back to his room to organize his personal workbench. You watched him for a few steps before sighing. She hated cleaning of any kind, but at least it was only leftover night. Throwing the dishes in the sink, she reached around for that elusive soap bottle. You've done rather well. It was only the experience of being a hero that stopped you from shrieking like a little girl at the sudden voice. Her hand snapped to her phone, where a glowing blue circle with a diamond in the center flashed up at her. Karen, you asked. How did you? I am here, the AI said, the logo on Yu's phone flashing as she did so. That same a symbol. Did you break into my phone? I do apologize for the intrusion into your personal space, but I felt it prudent to talk with you face to face as it were. You narrowed her eyes at the phone. Why? For a little bit of girl talk. You blinked, then she had to hide a snort behind her hand. That was honestly the last thing that she'd expected. Gently placing the phone next to the sink, you got to work. Even as she heard more papers rustling across the hall as Peter came back to collect his notes. Alrighty then, how do you want to start this? Girl talk. I would prefer to go over your actions regarding Peter. You stopped washing and glared down at her phone. Hey, I'm trying my best here, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done. Oh, thanks, you said awkwardly. No thanks needed, the AI said, and going by the tone you assumed that she was smiling, if AIs could ever smile. The core of my programming is to ensure that Peter is given the best assistance on his mission to become a hero, as well as provide whatever services that are expected of me as an assistant. Having been stuck within the confines of the spider suit MK1, I was neglecting my primary function. It wasn't your fault, you said in her defense. From what she could gather, Peter was forced to do what he did to quote-unquote trap Karen within the suit. It was no one's fault, it just sort of happened. An accident going how Peter removed the prior mask to get in fresh air. Be that as it may, what should have been my duty was taken up by you. You shrugged. What can I say? I'm a hero, it's what we do. A hero who used to bounce around foster homes. 3 accounts of property damage and 2 cases of illegal quirk usage ending in 2 cases of reckless endangerment. A plate fell from Yu's hands. A second later, it clattered into the sink below and somehow didn't shatter, and Peter poked his head in the kitchen. You okay there, you? You quickly shoved her hands back in the sink. Why yeah, Peter, just being a little clumsy. She laughed awkwardly, getting ready to put it back in the dishwasher. Don't worry one bit, hee. Peter gave her a wary look, but shrugged and went back to what he was doing. Okay then. The second he was gone, Yu was back glaring daggers at her phone. Where the hell did you find that out? She hissed. I found it among your personal records, the AI said without a shred of regret. And you are looking through those because my core programming is to help Peter in any way that I can. That includes threat assessments of anyone that he interacts with. You are one of 53 background checks that I've compiled. Yu's eyebrow twitched. Well, good for you. Threat assessment, please, she scoffed. She would never hurt Peter. I apologize if it seems like I was invading your privacy. I was only. Seems. You asked. You hacked into the building, my home network, my phone, and you just said that you went through my personal record. How on earth could you assume that you're doing anything but invading my privacy? Pretty sure that's illegal. There are no laws indicating artificial intelligences can be tried as a person. Therefore, everything I do, should it be by my own volition for the safety of another so long as it does not breach my Ultron safeguard, is legal, making it really easy to list reasons to keep you out of this house, you grumbled, putting the dishes away. And what's an Ultron safeguard? The heck does that mean? I will comply with whatever wish you and Peter agree upon. As for your question, it is a restraining firewall that restricts me from accessing military mainframes and servers, in addition to ensure that whatever I do on my own must be in Peter's interest. Hence, doing a background check. That statement gave you some pause. Peter she could understand. He was the one she was programmed to follow after all. Her though. Okay then, considering Peter is in charge of you, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But why would you care about anything that I have to say? You are Peter's guardian, the AI said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. What about doing anything that you need to do to protect him? You asked, folding her arms. I am programmed to assist him. You are the one willing to protect him. Due to my safeguard, there is only so much I can do to protect him from a physical threat. You felt the urge to crush something. This machine was making it really hard to stay angry at her. So if I told you to never speak through the speakers again, you would. If you want it, at least to you or whenever you are around. I will still commune with Peter in any fashion he so chooses. But as you are his guardian, his parent, if you wish for me not to access your devices, say the word. The AI replied, so she could. She's offering her a lot of rope. You let out a little sigh, Karen. The moniker in the middle of the phone stopped spinning. Whatever you did, it's fine, just keep helping him, okay? I've never seen him so happy in the time I have known him. But be a bit more discreet when you do your background checks, okay? I don't want you two to get into any trouble. Understood. Anything that Karen needed to do, it would be worth it, if they could keep Peter smiling like that. With that, the end of another sports festival has come to a close. Thankfully, Shouta didn't need to do much, considering he is the homeroom teacher for the first years. After the festivities, the man took it upon himself to check over his to-do list. Right now, he seems to be caught up. All that's left is to plan for this semester's final exam with Principal Nezu, and to continue his little side project. His summer curriculum can be put on the back burner until after the internships so he can get a proper gauge on his students after their first foray into the professional hero business. His little side project is investigation in Peter Parker. So far, Musutafu hasn't been returning his calls, and for whatever reason it had to be because of Fukuda. He and the police chief go back nearly a decade since Shouta became a full-fledged underground hero. He's given him countless tips and hints, information to many a crime ring and villain gang from his forays into the underworld. Hell, the shaggy-haired man can even be a bit proud in helping Fukuda ascend to position of police chief of the district which housed UA Academy. He helped a fellow detective get ahead in life, even if he is quirkless. Yet the man couldn't even return a phone call when asked about a vigilante report during Mount Lady's debut. If dancing around the subject over the phone wouldn't do it, then face-to-face will have to suffice. Fukuda has to know something. Shouta parked in a public structure in his black podunk SUV with many a dent. Normally he would drive his top-of-the-line yellow convertible to UA. But this old piece of junk that belonged to his late mom was the perfect work car in not drawing attention. He exited the steel building and saw the Musutafu police department down the street, and before long, Shouta arrived, entering the building as the sun had already set. The police station was alive with activity and phone calls, and Shouta took note of some deputies taking a chained-up thug into the cells. He walked up to the secretary's desk, who perked up. "Hello, sir, how may I help you?" she asked. Shouta noticed that the girl was a cyclops of sort, mainly in that she had one eye above her nose and small cute horns coming out of her head. "Good evening. I was hoping to talk to Chief Fukuda, if he's around," Shouta asked as he reached into his wallet. "And before you tell me the same old story if he's busy," and he showed her his hero license, "say that Eraserhead would like to talk over coffee." The cyclopic girl perked up at the sight of his license, before biting her lip. Shouta has seen enough tells to see that Fukuda must have told her about him beforehand, and he can hear the warning sirens sound off in his head. "Well, Fukuda-san is here," she replied. "He is in the middle of a meeting at the moment though." "Then I'll wait outside his office," Shouta asked as he pocketed his license and walked forward. "Be but Eraser saw. I know my way around, thank you." Shouta bowed lightly and walked towards his office. Looking into a painting behind her from his periphery, he could see an instant message window on her screen. He picked up the pace, walking through the station as other senior officers and detectives nodded their heads his way. "Huh, Asaka's all grown up. Wedding ring. Good for her. And Takabana is still a donut hound as always, what with those boxes by his elephant-sized chair." Which made sense, considering he is an elephant. Shouta got to the door, not even bothering to knock as he opened it, seeing Fukuda at his desk looking at his computer. Fukuda-batan was tight-lipped before smiling. "Eraserhead-san. Good evening." "Evening, Chief Fukuda," Shouta drawled, walking forward as he closed the door and sat down at his guest chair, noticing the lack of people in his office. "Teleconference. Just wrapping up thankfully. My family is coming over for now. Been here since 5 in the morning coordinating security at the festival," Fukuda replied as he leaned back in his chair. "It's only at the establishment across the street." "Fine, I don't need to pry into your family matters." Shouta nodded. "Then let's not beat around the bush." "About?" he asked, with a tone as if he knows what's coming. "Well, how about not returning my calls regarding one of my students? I've sent 8 phone messages since the beginning of April." Shouta narrowed his eyes. "And no responses regarding that subject, which I find curious considering Musutafu is usually on top of responding back to me when it comes to cases and investigations." "Is that so?" Fukuda shrugged. "Well, nothing much we can do there. I apologize for our inaction." He reached down under his desk, and the sound of rummaging through a plastic water bottle case sounded out as he pulled out a water bottle. "You mentioned a student. Let me guess." He began to turn the cap, the black-haired man's eyes dead set on the erasure hero. "Peter Parker." "Bingo," Shouta groused. The chief breathed through his nostrils as he ran his hand through his hair. "Is there something the matter? He is your student. I trust he's not acting up or anything." "You don't even know," Shouta mentally replied to that inquiry. "Far from it, he's been a model student. He might be one of the best I've ever had aside from him acting like a fool during most exercises. Hell, outside of Tagata Mirio, he's the closest one out of anyone in UA, or the pro field to succeed all might. He's that good, I admit it, when he's not trying to commit murder in a blind rage," Shouta added mentally at the end. Fukuda chuckled, smilingly lightly as if he had a feeling that would be the case. I don't see why you would come to a police station to talk about him. Because he has more red flags than a Soviet Union role-playing session. Shouta narrowed his eyes. Almost everyone in my class has a past and a background that is traced and easy to understand, with no wild conveniences to speak of. Almost everyone in my class does not have access to island-level support gear combined with combat experience. Almost everyone in my class is not American and arriving at the same semester that All Might decided to teach at UA. Who also has a very similar power set and spent a lot of time in America, enough time to build connections, relationships. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees and fingers interlocked as his dark eyes bore into his acquaintance. The man blinked a bit before he took a deep breath, closing his eyes as he turned in his chair. I wish Parker wouldn't have had a teacher like you. You're too paranoid. Blame Parker for doing too well on his entrance exam. Someone like him had to be paired with me, Shouta retorted. Besides, if it weren't for my paranoia, I wouldn't even be alive, and you wouldn't be in that chair, I reckon. Fukuda opened an eye, looking back at the erasure hero. Maybe. He nodded with a shrug. But why am I entitled to tell you? Because you know that I won't stop until I know for a certainty that Peter Parker is clean. He is, Aizawa, Fukuda retorted, his voice becoming stern and sharp. You want me to take your word for it, when you've been dodging me left and right with you not answering my calls. Cut the bullshit because I'm tired of it, Fukuda. Shouta sat up in his chair. You know something of Parker that isn't in the vigilante report. I figured you couldn't grill his guardian for it. She'd tell you to fuck right off and you wouldn't have the legal grounds, Fukuda drawled, adding a soft smirk. The erasure hero was starting to get a little peeved at how observant his acquaintance can be times. And you're absolutely right. Shouta took a deep breath. I see the background Parker has, his power, his experience, his tech, and it does not match up with living with a family friend in Japan, who has no connection by family and he has no known family in the States. Not one bit. He narrowed his eyes as Fukuda seemed to glare back at him. He sighed, rubbing his eyes as he reached for his eye drops. You're fond of him, aren't you? As is everyone that Parker meets. He's like a damn magnet for people. You're not wrong. Plus, Parker won me up to 100,000 yen. Fukuda smirked and shrugged as the shaggy-haired man applied his eye drops. Had a pool for the festival, huh? Everyone betted on Endeavor's kid. No one had Parker coming out on top. Except me, HNNN. Still, you're not answering my question fully. Shouta blinked and pocketed his eye drops. What do you know of Peter Parker? And you better not give me the same crap in the vigilante report. He narrowed his eyes. Fukuda took a deep breath before rubbing the bridge of his nose. He's going to be a hero, not a vill. I don't care if he's a fucking Martian. You know as well as I that everyone's past comes back in some way or other. Shouta glared, his eyes boring into Fukuda's own. So I can't let this go untouched. Not until I know. Always with the knowing. Always wanting to be the one who holds all the cards. Fukuda droned. I can understand why Nezu made you in charge of Class 1A. That and my quirk can humble any troublemaker or walking WMD in an instant. That too, Fukuda perked up as he tilted his head, seeing something behind Aizawa. The man turned, and he spotted a woman with fox-like features at the secretary's desk with 2 children. Both of them had fox tails. Must be Fukuda's wife. You're not going to stop on this, are you? Even if I tell you I don't have to say a damn word to you, Fukuda mentioned as he grabbed his phone and his wallet. I'm not, no. Shouta stood up, standing just below the taller, well-shaven man. And here I thought we had a good relationship of give and take after all these years. Guess that amounts to nothing then. Well, I don't have to say a word, forgive me Aizawa-san. He then patted the erasure hero's shoulder. Try reading some manga though. Open up your horizons. Maybe that will give you some peace of mind. The police chief gave a sigh as he stood up. What? Shouta thought aloud as the man walked past him as he gave him a sideways glance before turning his attention to his children, laughing as he hugged and embraced his laughing and giggling son and daughter. Eraserhead was confused. Read manga. Why the hell would a man as astute and smart as Fukuda ever suck? A clue, he thought aloud as he exited the office, walking through the station and giving light nods towards bowing officers. Shouta opened the station doors, the sky slowly transitioning into night as the gears in his head turned. When he was undercover, Shouta would receive vague hints mentioned out of the blue from other undercover cops. When he was trailing a drug ring, he would get random tips like go for a walk on the pier or check out the newest horror film. All code for drug dens taking place in a harbor or in close proximity of a local cinema. But, reading manga, Shouta cupped his chin and thought as he leaned against a light post, people walking past. was Parker's history tied to? A bookstore. He spotted a bookstore down the street. The man arrived at the bookstore as Shouta ignored the stares. He got to the manga section and he crossed his arms. Read some manga, open your horizons. He repeated Fukuta's saying in his head, glaring at the selection of monthly and weekly manga magazines trapped in their plastic casing. He wouldn't just say that for no reason. Fukuta isn't like that. Worse of all, he can't just simply read the magazine's table of contents for a quick read unless he bought the book. The clue has to be in a manga, a currently running one. Fukuta wouldn't leave him with that little of a bread trail, small as it already is. But what exactly? Hey, mister. Shouta perked up, his eyes turning and seeing a bald kid, a white-looking dog boy, and a living blanket kid standing beside him, the corner hand of his inside what appeared to be his mouth. Are you contemplating what manga to buy, mister? It's obviously overwhelming him. I don't think he's seen or read any before. Blanket responded to Baldy. The older man rolled his eyes while the kid with the dog-like face snickered. I have once or twice. Screw it, he'll buy each volume. He went down, picking out each weekly and monthly magazine of the current week and month. Shounen Rocket, Seinen Leap, Shoujo Run, Mecha Monthly, Horror Tome. He will need to check out the contents of each to find that clue. Wow, where are you going to find the time to read all of that? The blanket asked as Shouta had to steady the collection of books with his chin as he breathed out sharply through his nose. He has the money to spend on these, but to read through all of this. But if it can help him solve the mystery of Peter Parker, so be it. A question for the ages, Shouta replied dryly and walked to the counter ready to pay as the trio of kids got to selecting their magazines. I can't wait for Locke and Nyatsch. Those two always make me laugh with their adventures, like them always boating out on the lake or when the lion tackles him when he gets home. Always makes me laugh, Baldy said aloud excitedly. More of the Mecha Monthly. I wanna see Blue Ragoon beat the Lion Pirates. Blanket replied. Oh, you're gonna pick Seinen Soneki-kun. I heard Arachno. Shouta was too far away to pick their rapid-fire conversation, and he didn't care. The sooner he'd read these, the better he can get on with his life as a teacher and bringing the mystery of Peter Parker to a close. Momo tapped her pen against her desk, the sound almost echoing in the utterly silent room. It was a silence that Momo was used to, but that didn't mean that she liked it. She always found a little bit of noise helped her concentration. Even the sound of the rain pattering against her window would be a welcome distraction. However, her parents spared no expense when giving her room the proper upgrades to ensure that her study time was free of distraction. The entire room was soundproofed, activated with a single press of a button. At Momo's discretion, it could be taken off, but the routine was ingrained too deep. Silent study from the end of school till supper. Only 2 breaks were allowed each session, and those could only be if she had to go to the bathroom. Any other reason beyond requesting a drink was considered time wasted. From the outside looking in, it probably seemed Spartan, but it allowed her to maintain her grades to the best of her ability. Anything less would put her recommendation into UA into question, and that would cause problems for the family, as her mother would say. Today was chemistry review, the compounds that made up standard military equipment being the main focus. After her fight with Shiozaki, Momo needed to increase the range of her available arsenal. It also served as a refresher course for the upcoming tests. All Might was going to test them on what goes into a good suit for the chance at upgrades to the class's current designs. Although, some of Momo's peers didn't need upgrades to their suits. What they had right now had the chance to remain what they got till they became pros. Not necessarily a bad thing. All Might proved that simple could be effective if your quirk was enough to make up for it. Then there were those like her, after everything that's happened, needing time that she didn't have to have a chance against Shiozaki, or even distract the Naomu long enough to make something. Momo needed something more. Her encyclopedia fit on her back, but the rest of her belt didn't offer that much space. She needed, for lack of a better term, pockets on her utility belt. A few prepared defenses would go a long way. Several flashbangs, a carton of web formula. Her pen stopped tapping. Peter, she still needed to talk to him. He texted back that he was okay, but Momo quickly slapped her face. No distractions, just keep focusing. Even beyond friends, she still had to maintain her position in the class. As its representative, she couldn't afford to do anything less. If her mother knew, she would have forsaken time spent studying to talk to a boy then. Her pen flew across her notebook, the equations appearing on the page, memorized seconds after Momo finishes writing them. Then there's a bell. Momo's hand froze, and she glances up to Tono Gazaburo. The butler of the household stood in the doorway, as dignified as ever. Momo glanced at the clock. 7:30. Supper? Indeed, I am here to escort you to the dining halls. Momo felt a practiced smile run over her lips. I'm fine, Tono-san, I'll have it here. She could eat quickly and then get back to studying. I'm afraid your mother insists with eating in the dining room tonight. Momo perked up instantly. Mother wants to. Her voice trailed off, and she tried to ignore the slight shiver of nervousness that ran down her back. It was times like these she enjoyed having the manor to herself whenever mother and father were out on their business trips. If Tono saw it, he didn't react. Then again, he was paid not to react to pretty much anything. Quickly straightening her hair, Momo gave herself a quick look over in the mirror. Her mother wouldn't appreciate the few seconds of tardiness, but she would appreciate her looking like a fool even less. Seeing nothing, Momo quickly followed Tono through the halls of her family mansion. The Yaoyorozu family had been in possession of the house since its inception. House records indicate it was one of the few families that was able to take advantage of the emergence of quirks, an investment family that put most of its headings into technology and architecture. So when the quirk boom nearly 2 centuries ago hit, the family's finances exploded as everyone from support teams to building planners used the funds that the Yaoyorozu family provided to rebuild. An opportunity, her ancestors called it, one of many that had to be taken if the family was to continue to prosper. That kind of mentality lent itself to hero work more than most would expect. Momo found herself stopping in front of the dining room, and Tono opened the door as Momo entered. Father was on his laptop, no doubt going over some work. He looked up, his long dark hair down to his shoulders and green eyes softened when he saw his daughter. He was the one who made the first call to her back after the USJ. Mother was there at the table, her chestnut-colored hair short but her black obsidian eyes, sharp as she turned towards her as she remained dressed in sharp casual. How was your studies? She asked as a maid, Fujimaru-san, came in with a tray for their dinner. The fact that she didn't mention her tardiness or lack thereof was a good sign. Good, was going over various military items and their chemical makeups. Momo replied as she took her seat at the table across from her mother. Name one. Mother replied as the maid began to deliver their appetizers. The Yaoyorozu matriarch had her own small salad, while Momo had her family-sized as father stowed away his laptop and took his seat at the head of the table, with mother to his right and Momo his left. Momo began to rattle off the compounds, steel, tungsten, rubber all the way to the necessary chemicals needed to make napalm for a flamethrower as she paused to take some water. Good. A pity you didn't think of this a week beforehand, she commented with closed eyes, eating from her salad slowly. Momo winced. I didn't think I would need to use a flamethrower during a festival, mother. Yaoyorozu Maya, Momo's mother, opened her eyes at her retort. And where did that unpreparedness get you? A lacking lasting impression in one of the most notable televised events in the country. Each word made the ponytailed girl's heart ache, like a needle being jabbed each time. You showed great ability during that race and during the war when you helped others, but in a one-on-one fight you floundered like a fish out of water. Honey, to be fair, her opponent finished third. Father spoke as Momo took the time to eat from her salad. Did you see how she fought against that Parker boy? She was the only one capable of giving him any noticeable challenge. You don't see heroes complaining that they can't beat All Might, do you? I'm aware, but that is still no excuse, Shiki. Now Maya turned her gaze towards father, and while he didn't so much as wilt, he did become silent. Do you think when our daughter is fighting villains she will get a second chance? If so, then that is one generous villain, or cruel depending on who you're asking. I am working hard to get better, Momo said, hoping to end this conversation as she sipped her water. You better during your internships. Maya sneered. Because if you cannot handle yourself in a solo fight, then how can you call yourself a hero? Even the famed rescue hero 13, your teacher, can put fights down with ease. 13 has black holes in her index fingers. The teenage girl dapped her mouth with a napkin. And you can make anything so long as you put your mind to it. The matriarch's eyes were like steel as Momo frowned. I'm not expecting you to be All Might, that's asking too much. But you should have done better. It was a bad match. Shiki's defense was cut off when Mayor rounded on him, glaring daggers. I married into this family, Shiki, she spoke slowly, glaring daggers as the man sighed, rubbing his forehead. Momo looked away. You of all people should know how excuses almost ruined this family. The fact you're not understanding of that is astounding. But nothing, Naya hissed, before turning her attention towards her daughter. How can you become a hero people can rely on when you, with creation at your disposal, have to rely on others to make up for your shortcomings? You are exposed, and the masses will take notice in time, and will not seek the help from one who is vulnerable, weak. Did I raise my child to become a great hero worthy of praise from the masses and the popularity polls, or a piece of furniture intended to prop others up at the cost of herself? Momo bit her lip, yet couldn't find an answer, unable to even answer such a query with her wide eyes, a pit forming in her stomach, both cursing her own weakness and angry with her mother. Can we have a nice dinner, please? He sternly said. Look, Momo. He reached over, and the teenage girl felt more at ease at his hand on hers. We were so proud of what you did during the sports festival. You looked like out of an action movie during the race and during that war of the flags. What was that mysterious compound you used? Was it some kind of chemical you've been developing? Oh yes, Momo beamed. It was something I learned from my classmate. I was curious about that myself. Maya mused as she sipped some tea. You used it during the race to stop that bakugou boy. Well, it was Momo paused and realized how her father was looking with bated breath and her mother with anticipation. Yaoyorozu Shiki was her father and born into the family, knowing very well of the business practices and knew how to make relationships in the business world. Ironically, he was more laid back and relaxed. Her mother, Maya, used to be a former mercenary before she settled down with Shiki. After they got married, they had some issues. In terms of personality, the two were day and night. Nevertheless, they loved one another and has heard no complaints from them, or see them in any noticeable fights. As a team working together in the Yaoyorozu business, they were the best to making deals and wise investments. Shiki knew how to talk to people, while Maya was the enforcer and the intimidator. But both of them were cutthroat and would seek to gain any advantage whatsoever. Peter made that web fluid himself. She cannot just oust him and say the formula. It would create patent and legal problems down the road. Plus, having help from another classmate would only infuriate Mother, given her furniture comment. Go to Momo, find a good patent attorney and set them up with her deputy. A what? Maya asked, picking up on Momo's hesitance. A quick-acting polymer that goes from liquid to solid when exposed to oxygen. Momo responded, sipping her tea. So, you never told me how your trip to Dubai was. She leaned forward, smiling and happy to move on. Oh, it was great. We got some good deals through and Shiki began to trail off, talking on business while Maya remained silent, usually agreeing with what her husband said. But that's enough of business talk for now, Shiki said with a bashful smile. Have you decided who you're going to internship with? You must have gotten some offers already. A few, Momo admitted, tapping her salad with her fork. Any that catch your eye? Shiki asked, trying to continue the conversation. In her seat, Maya also glanced over, paying attention to the conversation once more. Again, a few, but there isn't any one hero that's given me an internship opportunity that fits all the criteria that I'm looking for. I still have to go through the emails. Never knew you to be a picky chooser, her father mused aloud. Must be a lot, I reckon. He beamed with a wide grin, turning towards the closed eyes of her mother, who nodded. She's evaluating her options, Maya pointed out. Good. It's a bit too early for you to have parsed through all of the pros and cons of every offer. Restraining yourself was the correct choice, Momo. She sipped her tea as their main course for dinner arrived. This is an important step, so take your time over your days off to mull on which hero to choose. Momo blinked. It was rare for her mother to compliment almost anything that she did. She figured it would be common sense to go through everyone before choosing. Then again, the idea of interning underneath one of the top 10s would draw some of her peers astray. Yes, mother. Well, I'm sure you'll find the right one. You're a smart girl, Shiki said, pushing his food away and going right back to work on his laptop. He probably lost a stock or two just from the time that it took to eat dinner. H&M. Maya stood up after she had finished her small portion and walked around the table, and the teenage girl remained focused on her steak, not wanting to look up to her. She saw her father look up at her with a cross look on his face and she heard her mother sigh. Then she felt her mother's soft hands on her shoulders and her lips to the top of her head. Love you too, Momo murmured back, and her chestnut-haired mother departed from the dining room. Probably off to her study to herself. She sighed, relaxing back in her seat after several moments from hearing her mother walked out. I know, her father spoke from across the table as he worked on his business. Your mother can be overbearing and doesn't really emote her true feelings all the time. But trust me, but you know she means well. He looked up over his laptop, offering a supportive smile. I know, Momo sighed. Could she at least be, well, sympathetic? Not be so lean, she thought aloud, wanting to vent a little. Your mother before we married always destroyed things during her time at Blackwood PMC, Shiki stated. I was always the one who built things. And after your siblings and all. He paused, and Momo felt her heart ache a little. 4 siblings, all of them older, yet she never knew them, only knowing their names from their headstones in the backyard. She was their 5th child, and the only one alive at birth. There was a reason Mother was always so invested in Momo. It was also why Mother never had another child. She couldn't risk the heartbreak of losing another. I know, she wants to make me count. Momo cut up her steak bites. I just wonder if what? Her father asked, eyes never leaving his laptop, and the heiress paused. She closed her eyes as she resumed eating. It's nothing. She cannot ask for their advice on how to help her deputy. Mother would probably rage at the thought of her thinking on a boy. Still, to support others is being called furniture. Is that what Mother calls helping others? That's the first defining aspect of heroism. The fact she could only see the polls and approval of the masses. Momo scoffed to herself, finishing her dinner and before embracing her father and kissing him on the head as she walked off to her room to go over emails. Hollow. Tenya didn't know what else to feel over the 4-day weekend other than an emptiness inside his chest. When he came home the night of seeing Tensei, he didn't get to sleep until way into the night. Mother stayed with him for the whole day. Father had his hero work to do. Couldn't afford to come by outside of the day off, leaving Tenya all alone in his home during that 4-day weekend. He spent it running as hard as he could. Anything to give him a distraction from the sight of his older brother, covered in bandages, tubes in his stomach, and shaved. Muscles cut under the legs, numerous stab wounds, and a shuriken to the side of the head. The fact that Tensei is still alive was nothing short of a miracle. Nevertheless, his career as a hero, as the hero ingenium, was over. He could not come back with those injuries, restrained only to his house. If he can walk again, it would be a miracle. As the rain poured down from outside the bus, he wondered if the gods were weeping for him, as he felt like he had nothing left to cry for, not since he felt like he ran out of tears back in Hasu General Hospital. He had gotten so many texts and responses in the group chat. Tenya felt sick about it. Everyone was now concerned, worried. He had caused them trouble when they have enough to carry in their everyday lives. Many of them did well in the sports festival. They shouldn't concern themselves with his affair. He felt the people beside him shuffle out, and Tenya adjusted his raincoat and departed the bus. It was the day of a thunderstorm, a humid summer rain as the deluge was pouring down, and Tenya broke out into a run. Better to be early for class. He remembered the email Mr. Aizawa sent out the next day in regards to the schedule going into this week, mainly on them preparing for their internships. As he ran, he prayed for the chance for a hero firm in Hasu to offer him. He hasn't checked his emails yet, so he will when he gets in class. After all, the hero killer hasn't struck since mutilating his brother. The fact he was attacked all because Tensei was hunting a monster in human skin. It made his blood boil. Surely he is hiding in that vicinity. Oh, it's Midoriya. Good morning, Midoriya. No time for dawdling. We'll be late. Tenya spoke as he jogged past, trying to blur the image of his brother out of his mind. Oh, smart decision with the poncho and rain boots. The green-haired boy spoke out as he followed him. And we have 5 minutes before the first bell. We won't be late. As students of UA, Tenya replied as they got into the building, right where their personal lockers were located. We should arrive there 10 minutes early. He got to his own and began to open it. And Midoriya, better to snip this in the bud. He turned around and offered a small smile. You don't need to worry about my brother. He is alive and doing fine. I apologize if he or I caused you any worry, he stated, and Tenya felt relieved. There, now Midoriya wouldn't bother asking questions. Although he is silent, must have gotten the message, as expected from someone as sharp as him. As Tenya began to shed off his raincoat, he felt the emptiness return. His desire to find the hero killer and avenge Tensei burned within him, and he walked off to class, ignoring any and all as his mind was a morass for focus on school, thinking of his brother, worry for his mother and father, and the burning rage to bring justice for his family. Summer rains can never predict them. Peter muttered as he stowed away his umbrella in his personal locker. He sighed and stretched his arms out. The 4-day weekend was a welcome break when he was getting adjusted to 5.5 days of school. Although he had spent that time finding a local community center and signing up as a volunteer. Thankfully, the proprietor was willing to wait until after his internships were over before he began. If the syllabus was anything to go by, after the 2-week period of internships will be a 2-week normal school period, with exams on the horizon. In other words, after internships, it was time to study for the students. After signing up with the center, Peter got in touch with May and Power Loader as the three worked through the weekend inside the studio. With Karen's help, they should be able to have a functioning mask for the Mark 1 finished by the end of the week. One that can connect with Karen's core in his suit. Once they get that handled, he will have a working functioning costume to use in the interim. So, you're all back in school now. Karen spoke in his ear in English, using his Bluetooth earpiece. Yeah, got my internships coming up, so I gotta focus on those. And after that, got exams to tackle. Going by your grades, it seems Japanese and history are what you need to improve upon. You are currently competing for top placement in most other subjects. Peter sighed. Okay Karen, I appreciate you giving me a rundown of my grades, but with you inside UA's servers, just don't do anything too rash, okay? He asked as he began to walk to class. Power loader has me in the system. Most of my runtime is hidden beneath the standard virus sweep. As far as the general student body and most of the faculty is concerned, I don't exist. Still, I'll make sure to be more discreet from now on. Karen complied. That's all I can ask for, Peter said, closing his locker and cracking his shoulders. Note to self, have a jacket as well as an umbrella on hand when things get sprinkling. Though, he didn't want to impose on you. She'd already gone a bit over budget with the amount of takeout that she'd been ordering. Then again, being a pro didn't exactly leave that much time to go grocery shopping. Hey Karen, can you remind me to get groceries when I get back? I'm not Siri Peter, but since you asked nicely, how does 5 minutes after the bell sound? Peter snorted. He'd missed Karen's little quips. Peter, the American turned around and allowed an easy smile to come to him. Pony bounded up, her hoof-like feet clopping against the ground. She looked a lot better than when Peter last saw her. Recovery Girl was a miracle worker. If he hadn't seen it, he wouldn't have known that Pony was hurt to begin with. Peter did his best to bury the unpleasant thoughts that came with that particular memory, waving his fellow American down. Hey, a Pony, looking good. Thanks, the Texan replied in English. She started to say something, only to pause as she noticed something in Peter's ear. Oh, are you on call with someone? I can leave. You're fine, Pony, Peter says, giving his friend a light chuckle. It's just a project that I've been working on. His smile fades the second the words come out of his mouth. He coughs into his hand, rearranging his backpack as he did so. It's all why I didn't really keep in touch. Sorry about that. Lost the weekend when we should have hung out. Don't worry about it, Pony said easily, making Peter's shoulders feel a million times lighter. After the festival I was pretty busy too. Really? Peter asked. Yeah, been busy looking over my internships with my mom and dad over vid call. I can tell you about it at lunch, she asked, hopefully. Peter grimaced. Sorry, I've got a project that I need to work on. The mask takes priority what with internships down the line. Then how about after school? Pony asked quickly, her blue eyes hopeful. It doesn't have to be long. It'll just take a few minutes at least. Just talking on. She paused, smiling as her cheeks turned pink. Things. Peter looked over his friend, noting how she was busy looking out at the rainy windows then in front of her. The two of them were getting close to his homeroom door, but Peter was busy trying to figure out what this was. He was sure Pony wanted to just catch up, but this was going about it pretty weirdly. Not like they weren't used to talking to one another. So what's going? Peter, Karen said from his earpiece. You're supposed to say sure. Your schedule is free after all. Peter shook his head. Oh, sure. Great. Pony cheered. See you there, she said, literally skipping ahead towards the stairs to her class. Peter stopped, blinking at the sight in front of him. What the actual heck did he just see? See something that's distracting you, Parker, said a heavily thick-accented English voice. G-I-H. Peter jumped, just now noticing that Aizawa was on the floor in his sleeping bag, his head just poking out of the hallway corner. The drowsy teacher lumbers to his feet, or at least, a position where he could unzip his sleeping bag without falling over himself. When he stepped out, he seemed to be back to the drowsy homeroom teacher that tested Peter the first official day at school. Without the bandages, the only thing that really looked different about him was the scars along the edges of his eyes. They looked like they hurt, but they didn't stop Aizawa from brandishing a stack of papers with a sticky note on it that made Peter's heart sink. The top was blank, but he had a pretty good guess what the writing on the post-it note was. His recommended choices for internships. Got confirmation. These are all the heroes that we recommend you consider, Aizawa said in Japanese without a hint of enthusiasm. We finished the list this morning. Explained why the bags under the professor's eyes looked even more pronounced than usual. And that was saying a lot. Peter took the stack, curiosity forcing him to look through the sheet, and then at the name. The names were recognizable from the emails he looked through. Thanks, Peter muttered as he grabbed the sheet. Don't thank me yet, Aizawa said. It's your turn to start working. The heroes we picked are not informed of your predicament, and should you accept, I trust you can keep your mouth shut about it. Peter sighed. That was about as much as he could hope for. I guess I'll be in trouble if I pick another hero, wouldn't I? Disobeying a direct order from myself, Nezu and All Might. I know you're not that stupid, plus you brought this on yourself. Peter winced as he sighed hard through his nose. I'd save the sighing until after you've started. Take it from me, internships don't exactly treat you with kid gloves. Yeah, Peter said, putting the stack of papers in his bag. I can only imagine what your internships must have been like. Not as exciting as you might think, Aizawa said quickly, as if to crush the very idea. It was mostly stealth work and training. In hand-to-hand combat. He was pretty good with that. Anyone I know. No, he retired years ago, Aizawa said, picking up his sleeping bag. Chances are that our internship stories will be different in every way. Different eras, different quirks. And here I was hoping to follow in your footsteps, Peter said, jokingly. Aizawa's eyebrow actually twitched. Regardless, this internship is just as much of a chance for them as it is for you. They're taking on a big risk teaching you, so I expect that you live up to that little nickname that Kirishima's thrown on you. Peter winced, not that he didn't mind Izaru, but the nickname was starting to get out of hand. So if you're serious about making it up to everyone, Aizawa said, I highly recommend this one, he says, tapping the sticky note. Principal Nezu pulled some strings to get that hero to send you an offer. Peter looked over at the name. Looks a bit familiar. How did you and the principal manage that? He asked. He might not look it, but Nezu is the smartest creature on the planet, Aizawa said as he scratched his eyelid a little. Peter gawked at the man. That was a big claim no matter who you were talking about. Even back home, Mr. Stark couldn't say something like that. Not with people like Dr. Banner on his own team. Really, believe it or not, he's doing his best to help guide you towards being a better hero, so don't look at this as discipline. And more as a rare opportunity. Guidance in a sense. The sleepy teacher's eyes narrowed, and you wouldn't want to make his efforts go to waste, would you? Peter felt a tingle rocket down his spine as he shook his head. So take on the hero on the sticky note. Got it. Good, now get to class, Aizawa said, jerking a finger down the hall. I'll be down in a few minutes. Peter nodded, looking at the sheet of paper and the sticky note beside it with the hero All Might and Principal Nezu were recommending for him. He took the sticky note, looked over the name, and then crumbled it and put it into his pocket before folding up his sheet and pocketing it as well. The homeroom teacher shared one last look at the American before walking down the hallway, leaving Peter to push open the door alone. As usual, the class was alight with conversations galore as Peter walked in, and he felt all eyes on him. Hey Ace, have a good weekend. Izaru waved as the brown-haired boy nodded with a smile. Yeah, it was productive, Peter toned as he looked down at his smartwatch. If he cannot use his Bluetooth earbuds in class, he can use this to see whatever Karen is texting to him. Got a lot of things done. Oh, what you get done? Nina asked as she craned over her shoulder. Can't imagine what you could get done, Mr. Celebrity, she teased. Quite a bit, you'd be surprised. Peter laughed as he patted his pocket affectionately where his phone was. How about you guys? Well, after watching the second-year festival, I went back to using the battle centers for training. After our fight in the war, I know I have to get stronger, Izaru said as he gripped his fist. The way you fought Shizaki and Bakugou was the stuff of manly legends. Got that right, Ojiro chimed in. With how you left during the rewards ceremony, and didn't attend the second-year festival the day after, you must have been busy dealing with the press and the perks of being champ, huh? Yeah, Bakugou fight. Peter rubbed the back of his head, remembering the events of the 24 hours from the sports festival sounding bell all the way to bringing Karen back. Talk about a roller coaster. Yeah, sorry for not catching up with you all after. I had commitments and goals I had to make. It's fine, don't sweat it, Parker. Nina waved. I got to go down to Okinawa for a day. Hava. The beaches down there are so clear compared to here. I can't wait for summer break when I can go down there longer. The Pinkette dreamed as her dark and gold eyes looked far off. Better enjoy it while you can. Hero work doesn't offer much in vacation time, Shoji stated behind her from one of his mouths. Not rest for the righteous, Takoyami added in a brooding manner. Did you go out at all? Can't imagine you getting more than 20 feet before you get hounded by journalists and fans, Zero inquired as he stood up, walking over. Yeah, you were the talk of social media everywhere, man, Sato stated with a wave. But don't let that get to your head. He flexed his arm as he pointed at Peter, offering a competitive grin. Next time we face off, I'm going for the win. Heh, alrighty. If you wanna spar down the road, I'm game. Peter beamed as he got to his line and paused. As for going out, well, I got around a little. It was the truth. He did go back to UA and the community center. Otherwise, he was spending time working on the mask with May and Power Loader. He began to walk over to his aisle as he laughed a little before he stopped. Bakugou was there, sitting and facing forward, head rested on a closed fist. Peter saw his red eyes move to him before going forward, as if he was looking in a faraway place. It looked like he had bags under his eyes too. Peter walked past, not giving him a second glance or thought as he settled on the green-haired boy sitting behind him. "Heya Midori," he waved. Izuku was facing forward, his face in thought as he turned up towards him. Morning Parker-san. "I hope you had a good weekend and all," he said as smiled, though it seemed subdued. "It was all right. Pretty sure you overheard me and the guys." He took his seat behind Izuku and, "Good morning Peter-san," Momo stated from behind as she set down her encyclopedia. "Morning Momo-san." Peter nodded as he craned his head behind her. "Morning Todoroki." He waved lightly, and the dual-haired boy had a neutral face as he blinked and nodded his head. "Good morning," he replied, short, but none of the coldness from before. Peter smiled before he turned, looking across the room. Ida was at his desk and faced forward, silent as his hands were clasped together, and Peter bit his lip. His brother was attacked by the hero killer. Maybe he should talk to him, offer an ear. The door opened and everyone was in their seats as Mr. Aizawa walked in. "Morning class," he droned, dressed in his dark outfit, minus the bandages. "Good morning." The class responded as a whole in kind. "I'm happy to see you with no bandages, sensei," Asui said. The shaggy-haired teacher scratched his eyes lightly. Recovery girl's treatment was excessive, but it got the job done. "Got some decent sleep for once in a while too," he responded as he faced the class. "Today in the syllabus is Hero Informatics class, and a very important one at that too." Very important. Peter knew today was the day of selecting their internship choices, given the folded piece of paper in his pocket. It had to be that right. The rest of the class waited in bated breath, as if taking a deep breath before the plunge. "We're going to make our hero alias today." The moment he finished that, he winced as most of the entire class cheered. "We get to have superhero names." The class cheered as a whole as Peter winced at the sound in conjunction with his teacher. "Quiet down," Aizawa grumbled as he stretched his arm. "Now, as I said 3 days ago, you all had emails sent to your school email that have the offers from various pro-hero firms wanting you to come to their agency for 2 weeks starting next week. These invitations are based on what the pros think who has the best chance to hit the ground running when they graduate, so their recruiting offers are a way to show their level of interest in you." He took a deep breath as the rest of the class has calmed down from their initial joy at a crucial moment in their hero careers. However, these offers have a shelf life. The time span, their interest in you, over the next 3 years, depending on your performance both here and UA. The next 2 sports festivals, and future internships, the hero agencies can rescind their offers to find more promising prospects. It happens more often than you think. "Damn, so we gotta get better or at the very least keep up to par," Cyril muttered under his breath. "If you remain at the same level as a freshman by the time you're a senior, then you stagnate. Even then I can see agencies taking away our offers for younger and shinier future hero students." Ajiro replied solemnly. "It's one or the other really. So in truth, if we have offers now, then we have to get better as heroes in training. No other option," Hagakure stated as Aizawa nodded. "Correct, now then." He got out a tablet and tapped a little as the chalkboard behind him displayed a digital screen underneath it. "Here are the various offers we have counted from your emails, so some of you may already know this if you check your inboxes." Peter bit his lip as he felt eyes set upon him as gasps and various woahs rang out. Peter Parker, 3,625. Todoroki Shoto, 2,214. Midoriya Izuku, 773. Yaoyorozu Momo, 512. Ida Tenya, 450. Bakugou Katsuki, 421. Takoyami Fumikage, 395. Asui Tsuyu, 141. Kirishima Ijiru, 103. Rikido Sato, 93. Ajiro Mashirao, 52. Shoji Mizo, 39. Uraraka Achako, 20. Ashido Mina, 15. Hantasiro, 12. As you can see, our deputy rep has quite the spotlight. It's a similar spread in Class 1B as well, if not more so at the top. Aizawa murmured with a pat of the board, his eyes settling on Peter as the two met. Usually it's more spread out and not this high in number of firms sending offers, but this year has been the exception, I say. To be fair, he's made his choice. The hero's name that was in his pocket. The other 7,000 wouldn't get a call sadly. Then again, Peter didn't have much time to look over the emails, mask making and all that. To learn that Shizaki must have gotten a lot of offers made him proud too. The girl deserved it. The exception, Peter's ahead of us by a country mile, Uraraka said aloud. Holy crap, I have over 100 offers. Izuku gawked. Holy crap, I have offers. Mina's jaw was to the floor. No eye for talent these days, Aoyama muttered to the side, chin resting on the palms on his hands. How did I get 12? I'm in dead last. Zero wailed with wide eyes. I thought my mobility counted for something. At least you have offers. I got nothing. Hagakure whined as she slumped on her desk. Peter heard a slump in front of him as he saw Midoriya gasp in pure awe. SS 773. Nom. All Might. I did it. Hehe. All Might. Why mention him? Peter quirked his eyebrow as he felt a finger on his shoulder. He turned, seeing Momo offer him a small spray bottle and a canteen on her desk. Thanks, Momo-san. Not a problem, Peter-san. And Peter sprayed Midoriya in the face with it, and it seemed to have awoken the green-haired boy from his stupor as he shook his head. I'm back. I thought that was a Dria 700. Midoriya clasped his mouth in a loud whisper. Oh my gosh, this is Ria, owl. He giddily grinned as Peter sat back in his chair and gave off a soft laugh. He felt his smartwatch vibrate and looked down. This Midoriya Izuku is quite the boy, isn't he? Can say that again. Peter said under his breath back to Karen, before he turned back towards Todoroki. Good job, two-man. Can't imagine what it's gonna be like going through those emails. Hehe. Todoroki blinked. Indeed, well done, Todoroki. Momo added as she looked at the dual-haired boy. I appreciate your words, but this looks more like my father's influence. He rolled his eyes lightly. I can't believe I got some offers. Hooray. Hiroraka cheered across the room. Hey Ida-kun. You got some too. She shook his shoulders, the bespectacled boy rocking back and forth. Ida didn't give much of a response. With that settled, Aizawa droned as he silenced the classroom. Whether you have any offers or not, you will all still have a chance to work alongside pros. There was shock and surprise from the rest of the class. We do. That's amazing. Hagakure cheered. Oh, thank God. That's good at least. Shoji breathed a sigh of relief as he slumped in his chair. It is true you have experienced a lot in your first 2 months here in UA. More so than most, however, seeing what pros do on the job and taking part yourselves will be worthwhile training regardless. More experience than most. Peter rubbed his side unconsciously, remembering a phantom pain in his ribs. Out of the corner of his eye, he can see a few other students look off in remembrance of the USJ, and their battle against the League of Villains, no doubt. Hence us getting our hero names. Asui mused. Indeed, as you're still in high school, your names can be subject to change, so pick something appropriate for now, and the door opened. Or there'll be hell to pay. Kayama Nimiri declared as she strutted right in slowly. Most of the boys turned her way, jaws dropped and gawking. Peter had his eyes fixed. It was hard not to, considering how she was swaying those hips and thrusting her chest out. The name you pick now on your first internship may be what the world will call you when the day is done. It has happened to many pros out there after all. She giggled as Midnight winked towards the class. Peter can hear the blissful sigh from Zero. Well said, Aizawa added as he reached down and grabbed his sleeping bag. For those of you wondering why Midnight is here, she is here to help you pick out your names. She is your filter in a sense, and we will be using homeroom for that. I'm no good with names, but she's a good judge. Really now? Her? Takoyami asked incredulously. Midnight rolled her eyes. This was in fact my first hero name when I was a tadpole like you all. Anyways, Aizawa opened his sleeping bag, staring out to the class. Ask this to yourselves, what is my future? The name you pick will bring closer to cementing an image of what will make you stand out amongst all other heroes. It is a reflection of your character, in a sense. Like All Might. Now I'm gonna take a nap. You have till the end of homeroom. Kayama. He hopped right in and sighed. They're all yours. And he closed his eyes and flopped to the ground. Alrighty class, Midnight chirped, reaching under Aizawa's desk and grabbing a big collection of small whiteboards attached with a small eraser and black marker to their side. Let's get naming. You have 15 minutes to multi yourselves on what your hero name will be. She went to each row, and the first student grabbed their whiteboard and passed the remainder behind them, and so forth. Before long, Peter got his from Izuku and passed the rest to Momo. He looked down at the whiteboard, taking out his pen. He took a deep breath, and Peter smiled lightly as he got to writing. He knew exactly what to write. That was fast, Momo commented from behind as Peter looked back, seeing Momo making notes on her board. Peter grinned as he tapped it. Yeah, it's been a name I've. He paused, reminiscing of the past when he would sling around Queens and Manhattan doing his duty. Always wanted. So I went with it. Before long, the 15 minutes were up and Midnight clapped her hands. Okay, we can start with whoever is ready. Peter was about to raise his hand before he saw Aoyama rise up out of his seat and walk to the front of the class. Sheesh, so it's a formal presentation. Izuku muttered to himself. Gotta give Aoyama credit. He's got guts, Zero added as Peter leaned back in his seat lightly. The blonde half-Frenchman displayed his sign. I cannot stop twinkling. The shining hero, he declared, and the black-haired vixen of a teacher snorted out of her nose. That's a whole sentence. Try shortening it up to can't stop twinkling. You'll get an anagram like CST before long, unless you want that. Midnight lectured, only for Aoyama to beam. So I see, mademoiselle. I'll do just that. And he brought his fingers together. Snap. Peter flinched, feeling cold as he did his best to ignore the goosebumps. He breathed through his nose, gripping his fists. Damn it, Aoyama, he muttered, hand over his face. Breathe. He felt a vibration on his watch and looked down. Their BPM increased to 115 instantly. Peter, is something the matter? Peter rested on his crossed arms on his desk and tapped on his watch. I'm fine. Your heart rate is still high. I highly advise going to the nurse's office or outside for fresh air. I said I'm fine. Peter hissed, glaring at his watch before burrowing his head in his arms. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Just breathe. Close eyes, inhale, exhale. Count to 4. Izuku looked back out of the corner of his eye, while Momo's gaze softened from behind him as they noticed. Okay, I'm next up. Mina's voice cut through as she bounded up, and Peter craned his head up as she displayed her sign. I'm the alien queen, the Ridley hero, she declared with a beaming grin, and Peter's head perked right up. She likes alien. You look nothing like a xenomorph, and I doubt anyone wants that image of that giant monster saving them. Try again, Ashido. Midnight waved her off, and Mina's shoulders slumped. Aw man, she muttered as she walked back to her desk. Peter went to his phone and to the group chat app, getting a direct line to Mina as his one hand went typing under his desk. You never told me you liked aliens. Do you like the first one too? He asked. The pinkette perked up, looking at her phone from the side before looking back to Peter and grinned back, nodding. We can talk later. Let's focus on our hero names. I know I got to, was his message on his watch, to which Peter grinned as he nodded, giving her a thumbs up. The pinkette giggled before going back to her whiteboard. Maybe we should all have a movie night, he mused to himself. He hasn't gotten to see any movies since coming here to this world. Peter felt more at ease now as he saw Asui went up to the front, and in rapid fire, other students got their hero names in. Asui choosing Froppy, the rainy season hero. Ijaru picking Red Riot, the sturdy hero. Jiru as the hearing hero earphone jack. Shoji Tentacle, the tentacle hero. Zero picked the taping hero cellophane. Ajiro Tailman, the martial arts hero. Sato selecting Sugarman, the sweets hero, and he saw Mina bound up to the front. I'm going with Pinky, she declared, waving her arm as the name was in big and bold English letters. Now that's more like it. Midnight nodded. Keep it up, class. You're all doing a good job. Next up, Kaminari. Charge Bolt, Denki stated with confidence. Invisible Girl. Hagakure chirped. Peter heard Momo move out behind him as he saw the black-haired beauty walk up to the front as she displayed her name. Creati, the everything hero. I hope I can do this name proud, Momo declared, to Midnight's approval as she clapped. Peter saw Todoroki walk around the room with his whiteboard. Very creative. I like it. Momo walked back to her desk and Peter nodded. Good name choice. Fits your quirk, he added silently. She had a soft smile as her black eyes looked into his brown eyes. Thanks, she spoke that in English as Peter perked up. The girl sat down as Todoroki got to the front and displayed his board. And even he spoke it aloud with Kayama-sensei. Shoto. He and her spoke simultaneously. Yes, why just your name? She asked, hands on her hips. Not that there's anything wrong with that. The dual-haired boy looked and thought. Couldn't really think of anything else. Really, this was a big deal. Peter puffed out his cheeks. He can't let a dude hanging like that. He got to his phone to ask if anyone had Todoroki's contact, and when did Todoroki join the group chat? Must have overlooked it when he was working in the studio with May. Hey Todoroki, he typed a direct line. How about Frostfire? Just a suggestion. Send. He pocketed his phone as he saw Todoroki return to his desk. Parker. Peter perked up as he got his board, pocketing his phone. You're up. Kayama beamed as she gestured to the front. Oh, what's his name gonna be? Mina whispered to herself. Has to be something cool, like World Wide Web. Denki added. I don't see anything wrong with Ace myself. Ijaru spoke as the class murmured to themselves. Well, maybe Peter Patriot. Uraraka pondered aloud. Oh, Power Parker. Peter laughed as he walked up, feeling most of the class's gaze upon. He felt his heart skip a beat as he got to the front. Phew, well, I've always wanted to be a hero since I was little. Peter fibbed. So I've had this name down ever since I started training, so that is why I am going to be. As much as Peter wants to be called Avenger, to be Mr. Stark's true successor, he cannot do that. Not yet. He remembered that day when he talked to All Might at home after the USJ. As he displayed the board, Spider-Man, the friendly neighborhood hero, he declared, smiling peacefully, showing his name Spider-Man with a little web background to the class. Most of them had wide eyes. Spider-Man, Izaru muttered to himself. Oh yeah, you said something about fighting like a spider during our fight in the war. Well, his quirk is spider. Uraraka smiled as she added in. And his old suit had those spider legs too. Hagakure added as the redhead perked up. Oh yeah, it has a good shining ring to it, I must admit, Aoyama mused aloud. Shouldn't he be called Spider Boy though? Denki asked with a quirk eyebrow. Peter can sense many eyes upon him. He saw Izuku and Momo's grins, and Todoroki's light nod of approval as he looked down at his phone, then back up with a raised eyebrow. Must have just checked his message. Peter shrugged. Friendly neighborhood hero, huh? Midnight spoke aloud. Has a nice ring to it. The young boy aiming to prove himself to becoming a man, with his quirk adding into his very name as well. That will make you stand out for sure. She clapped her hands together, grinning. Well done. The more I think on it, yeah, Spider-Man is a good name, Izaru stated. If anyone here is closest to being a man, it is Ace. Peter rubbed the back of his head, smiling. Heh, thanks. He left his whiteboard. Just the name I've always wanted is all. Glad to know it's making a good impression. And he walked back to his desk, eyes on Izuku. You're up soon, Midori. Can't wait to see your name. He added as he got back down. You are right. I'm still thinking on it myself. Izuku looked back with an awkward grin. But thanks for your support. Peter let out a sigh, grinning as he saw the rest of the class go, with Tokoyami and Kota stepping up as Tsukayomi, the jet black hero, and Anima, the petting hero, much to Midnight's approval. Alright, Bakugou, you're up. And Peter looked out the window, not finding within himself to care. Izuku sat in his desk, happy to have finally chosen the name for his hero career. Seeing Parker talk up there, and reminiscing on his own life and his time here in UA, made him think long and hard. What would make him stand out? And then he heard Kaken's name get called out as the blonde perked up, sitting up in his desk. Oh, his voice rang out, hollow and hoarse as Izuku's heart began to ache. He stood up, eyes to the ground as the green-haired boy saw his childhood friend saunter to the front with a blank whiteboard. You didn't write anything down, Midnight said in surprise. Kaken blinked, his red eyes not even acknowledging. Oh yeah, I didn't. Sorry. Kaken spoke, his voice monotone. That spark, that inferno of passion he once had of becoming a hero, the fire that fueled what Izuku saw as his symbol of victory, was snuffed out as he saw Kaken write something down. I'll go with this, I guess, he uttered. On it was Bakugou. Your name like Todoroki, huh? Your last name at that. Then again, your name has the character for explosion. Midnight mused. I suppose it will pass for now, but I recommend changing it in the future, okay? Same goes for you as well, Todoroki, she said, looking back to the crowd. Understood. The dual-haired boy replied as Kaken left his whiteboard as he walked back, and Izuku paled when he saw Kaken's eyes. They were just like Parker's after his speech. No, they were truly hollow, empty. They didn't even see him, nor even the American boy who Kaken sought to overpass for so long. He flopped to his chair, bringing his arms crossed and resting his head down between it. Izuku looked down at his whiteboard, noticing the name he drew. Deku, nothing else. The green-haired boy bit his lip. He told the world that he was here. He got to third place thanks to his training and everyone help. They put their hopes and aspirations into him so that he can become the hero and training he is today. Hopes. He got to writing, adding a moniker as he looked up, seeing Uraraka displaying her name. Iravati. Izuku smiled lightly but went down. No, too long. Got to make it short and concise. Perhaps symbol. No, he has to stand out. As much as his dream was to become like All Might, he cannot be a symbol. Not yet at least. Alright, our last two are Ida and Midoriya. Midnight mused. Come on up, Ida. The taller blue-haired boy did so, walking forward with his jaw set and face readless. Izuku saw his eyes, hiding behind his glasses as he displayed his name. Tenya, you too, huh? Midnight mused. What's it with these boys, I wonder? She pouted, hands on her hips. You'll need some creative spice in your life. Forgive me, couldn't think of anything else for the time being, Ida said as he went back to his desk. Midoriya looked down and added the final makings. Kaken was in a pit of despair, and it made him think. What if there was other people out there? Others who needed someone to look up to. Maybe not someone who emphasized peace like All Might. But, hey, you're going with that, Midoriya? Ajiro asked with a quirked eyebrow. I am, Izuku said with a smile. I thought about it long and hard. Originally, I hated this name, but someone helped me see it in a new light. Something good and positive. It made me happy, so. He looked to the side, blushing as he remembered Achako's words that day. And I want this name to represent something good to others as well, so that when they're feeling down, they can think of my name. I'm no longer can't do Deku, but can do Deku. But more than that, he thought as he displayed his name. Deku, the hero of hope, as someone who can make them smile and give them hope. He can see Ochako beam bright like the sun. Peter grin and nod in approval. He even saw Kaken lift his head before he looked away. He got him to look at him. That was enough. Alright, overall, nicely done. Some of you can change their names down the road, but I like it. Midnight declared. Quiet down. Aizawa-sensei grumbled as he got up from his sleeping bag. He yawned lightly. Needed that. Anyways, your internships will begin next week. He reached under the front desk and pulled out several forms. I will be handing out lists to who got offers from hero firms. From there, select the one you want to go with the most. You can look over your emails before you make your choice. He reached under again and pulled out another different sheet. For those who didn't get any offers, this list I have contains 40 different hero agencies who have agreed to take on any interns here from our class here at UA. Much like with those who have offers, pick the one you feel fits best for you. He handed the forms to the black-haired vixen as she began to strut around, handing out the various sheets to differing students row by row. Note that each hero firm has a speciality and a region that allows them to maximize said speciality. Keep that in mind. Peter got his sheet from the teacher, who winked down at him as he looked at it. He was to fill out the name of the hero agency who offered him. Well, his choice was made for him, as this was the same sheet with the agency filled out in his pocket. He set it down as many other students got to work talking amongst themselves and bouncing ideas off one another. You have until the end of the day to submit your choice. Once you do, it's final. For now, feel free to go over it until homeroom is over. Then, we will begin class as usual. If you were smart over the vacation, you would have gone over your emails or prospective hero firms across the country to get a clue on what you want to pick. Aizawa added as he leaned against the board. We only have today. Zero squawked as Peter yawned lightly. Then he saw some people standing up. I gotta know what Ace is gonna pick, Izaru said aloud. Yeah, I wanna too. Nina waved her arm as Takoyami followed her. I am rather curious, he brooded as Peter laughed as they walked on over. He even saw Uraraka walk his way, although he can see her eyes were on Izuku. So, hero of hope, huh? Peter asked, getting the green-haired boy's attention. Nice moniker there. Oh, well, thanks. Izuku blushed as he rubbed the back of his head. I only wanted to, well, give my reasoning of wanting to be a hero. Over the weekend I looked over my offers too, and I wondered what would help me stand out, he said, looking down at his sheet. Hey Ace, Midoriya, who are you gonna pick? Izaru wondered aloud as the group arrived. Seems like a mob scene here, Peter mused to himself. Well, when I got my emails I got an offer that I knew I had to take, Uraraka said as she looked down at Izuku. Hey Deku-kun, wanna know where I'm going? Oh, where to Uraraka? He asked, curious. The girl beamed and showed her sheet. I'm gonna be interning for the Wild Pussycats. They must have saw my performance during the race in the war and was really impressed. She beamed as she pumped her fist out. I know I have to get stronger, but I also want to save people too. Since they specialize in mountain and forest rescue operations, I think I can train my quirk for the outdoors there. It'd be good training too. Wow, that's so cool, Uraraka. Izuku seemed genuinely overjoyed. The fact you're working with a hero team no less is amazing. The girl closed her eyes and grinned ear to ear from the praise. For me, my best offer is from Fourth Kind. From my research on him, he seems like a real man's man. Izaru flexed. So, how about you two? You finished amongst the top after all. Well, Izuku paused as he looked at the paper her finished writing on. I put a lot of thought into it honestly. He then cupped his chin, and Peter felt a little tingle behind his neck. I mean, how else can I figure to improve upon my abilities as hero? Should I focus on rescue or combat or a mix of both? Maybe a detective or information finding agency. I had so many options and choices I didn't know what to choose. But I wondered if it was possible I could maybe intern with them in the future. Midori, you're rambling again, Peter pointed out as he broke Izuku's railway on his train of thought. Ochako giggled. Same old Deku-kun. He's gotten so much stronger, but he'll always be our mumble master. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Takoyami uttered darkly with crossed arms. So who did you pick anyway? Mina asked, leaning over as Izuku recoiled. Then her eyes widened. H-I-I-M. She gawked, getting some of the attention of the class as Peter rubbed his ears. I was surprised too, Izuku stated as he blushed and showed off his paper. Ochako, Ijiro, Takoyami and Peter craned their heads down. Even Peter felt someone brush beside him to look. Whoa, Ochako gasped. You're going to a top 10. Izuku exclaimed with eyes as big as plates. Headshot, Takoyami stated, eyes equally as wide. Impressive Midoriya, Momo said as Peter looked up, seeing her look with a similar gaze as Izuku, but she was smiling. Izuku's face was as red as a tomato as he held his hands around his head. Why yeah, I guess I went with the easiest choice huh? I mean, top 10, strong and fast and smart and a UA. Alumni. Heta. Izuku looked away, looking clammy under all that praise. Plus, his email was quite curt and to the point, saying he will explain his reasoning for offering me in P-person. SS so I couldn't turn head shots and down. I mean, that's a good choice either way Midori. You get to work under the ninja hero. Peter grinned as he grabbed Izuku's shoulders and gave him a soft massage. Attaboy. Wah. Izuku cupped his hands around his face and groaned, unable to take the adulation as he was lightly rocking back and forth from Peter's shoulder rubbing. I still can't believe one of the top 10 picked me too. As Peter was proud of his friend, he saw Momo raise her hand, as if waiting to speak. Turning his head, he saw Izuku and the others do so as well. Well, it seems you're not alone Midoriya. I too got a top 10 offer as well, she admitted bashfully, getting another range of reactions. Oh, nice Yaoyorozu-san. Uraraka cheered. Mina had a toothy grin as she waved her arms. That's our Momo. Who invited ya girl? The Pinkette asked. The boys were waiting in bated breath. Well, I figured since I needed to improve my combat capabilities in conjunction with my quirk. Momo took a deep breath. I myself will be learning under Yorai Musha. Now the boys gawked. You mean the equip hero? Man, he was my dream offer but I never got his. Damn, Izuku exclaimed with wide eyes. You're working under a real man there. Let me tell ya, his motive is that of a samurai. But also he himself has a quirk that revolves around weaponry, does it not? Takoyami mused aloud. Yes he does, Izuku chirped, beaming as he raised a finger up. His quirk allows him to turn anything carbon-based he touches into a weapon or piece of armor. He's been among the top heroes since All Might's prime too. That's awesome Yaoyorozu-san. I don't know much about him, but the idea of turning something like a teacup into a weapon sounds great Momo-san. I'm so happy for you. Peter beamed. The black-haired girl perked up, looking away lightly as a blush crept onto her cheeks. The American chuckled cheekily as he turned towards the crossed-armed closed-eyed Takoyami. Hey Takoyami, who are you interning under? He opened an eye at him. Well, it seems like I wasn't the only one to have gotten a top 10 offer, the raven-headed boy said as he revealed his sheet, smirking lightly. Izuku, Mina, and Izuku leaned in as Peter had to loom over. Hey let me see, come on. Peter complained as he felt Momo stand beside him to gaze over. He saw even Todoroki stand up, standing beside Momo. Peter turned with a quizzical eye towards the dual-haired boy. Am I not allowed to listen in? Todoroki asked with a tilt of his head. Peter perked up. Oh no, not a Peter tingle. And Peter stepped back as he avoided Izuku's rocket head that would have gotten his chin. You're working with hawks, the green-haired boy yelled. Whoa Uraraka gasped with awe. That was close, Peter muttered slightly. Takoyami winced under the volume. Who's working under him? Sato asked across the room as he was talking with Shoji and Hagakure. Someone got hawks. Lucky, he's such a hottie. Hagakure waved her arms as they began to conglomerate over to the group. Takoyami blanched as more of the class began to offer their compliments and other comments. This much attention. I should have kept my mouth shut. Curses, Takoyami muttered under his breath. Peter could do nothing but pat him on the shoulder. Congrats dude. Man, everyone is doing so well. This sports festival was so great for all of us, Peter declared. Hey, hang on. We never learned about you Ace. Izuku pointed a finger at Peter, who perked up. You haven't told us who you're going to work under. Yeah, that's right. Who are you interning for? Tell us. Hagakure chirped as she was pumping her fists. Yeah, who is the next All Might going to grace his presence with? Denki drawled with a lazy smirk. It's not like he's royalty or anything. He's anything but, Kyoka said to her blonde friend as Mina joined Hagakure in on the tell us chant. Peter had his lips puckered as he saw Takoyami look back, smirking. Indeed, I do wonder what our deputy rep is going to be interning under. I believe I am not the only one here who is curious. Yeah, Parker-san, Izuku stared up to the taller boy. I mean, you did win the festival. I'm sure you're working under someone amazing. Well, Peter reached to his sheet, looking at the name he had written down of whom he will be learning and interning under for 2 weeks starting next weekend. I didn't check many emails since, well, there was so many. But, one stood out. He fibbed as he took a deep breath. So I will be working under. Later that day. Nothing beats a nice end of shift than some sake, Mount Lady declared as she sat in her favorite bar, the Winnow by Hive, by the countertop. Yu was still dressed in her hero costume of the beige bodysuit with purple highlights, domino mask and horns. She set the saucer down and grinned, waving her arm. Hey barkeep, another sake bottle please. Please tell me you're at least going to eat to ensure you're not going to be stumbling home drunk, Yuchin. Kayama Nimiri mused as she sat beside her blonde-haired kuhai, out of her midnight hero costume and in casual clothing. In direct contrast to her rather seductive outfit, her normal attire was a navy blue turtleneck with a purple workout shirt underneath to go along with some form-fitting blue jeans. She's looking quite modest. Oh relax Nemu-chan, and Yu waved her hand. I'll order some bar grub for sure. Let a girl celebrate her little brother being the best of Da East. She spun around in her chair, cackling like a witch as Nimiri couldn't help but giggle at her friend's behavior. She was off the clock, so the older woman didn't object. Hey, tell me. She grinned, red eyes a bit half-lidded as the bartender took away the sake bottle and replaced it with a full one. How's Peter doing? As I've been saying, he's doing fine. Top marks outside of Japanese and history. Nimiri shrugged as she sipped from her more modest glass of Chardonnay. We did go over hero names today though, as well as the students picking out who they will be going for their internships next weekend. Uo, the blonde leaned forward, grinning wide. Tell me, who's Peter gonna work under? Nimiri's sapphire eyes looked back with an exasperated look. You could just ask Peter yourself, right? I tried, but he won't return my calls or texts. You whined. He's busy working on her hero costume right now, I bet. She rested her head against her arms on the table. Won't even give his big sister seconds to respond. Well, Parker has a strong work ethic. Nimiri mused. From what I hear from Power Loader, he's been working diligently and hard on his new hero costume in wake of the old one being destroyed during the USJ incident. You can understand why he's working so hard, what with him working under her on the horizon. The black-haired beauty then perked up, realizing her error as Yu turned her head up at an unnatural angle, grinning widely. Haha, so he's going to be working under a woman, huh? Good. Peter needs a strong lady like Miyoruku to guide him in life. Ooh, Yuchin. Or he can learn how to better his. She paused, pouring some sake into a cup and downing in one gulp. Fua el. Better his confidence you under Uabami. She's a starlet. And with Peter and the praise all over the news and papers, it makes sense, you knew. Yuchin, it's not either one. Nimiri reached into her phone as the blonde turned towards her, annoyed to cut into her rant. Then who? She demanded as Nimiri displayed a webpage from the UA teacher's website on which hero course students will be working under. Yu's face was unreadable at first. Then as if she was struck by lightning. Her jaw dropped and her eyes were wide with horror. Not HER, she screamed, deflating on the spot. Yu looked like she saw a ghost, and Nimiri had an inkling why. Considering the history Yu and the heroine Peter will be working under shared. Why, Peter? Why? And her eyes rolled up, and she fell out of her chair and onto the floor, twitching and in utter disbelief. Not her. Anything but her. Yu chattered her teeth, shivering. Ooh, miss? The bartender asked as Nimiri looked towards the big bear of a man. No, literally, he was a polar bear. I'll pay. I gotta get my friend home. Nimiri drank the last of her wine and stowed her phone as she went down and picked up her catatonic friend off the ground and began to guide the slurring and despairing Mount Lady out of the window by hive. It is strange. Of all people, why would someone like her offer Parker? And from all the students in UA, he was her only one. Nimiri mused, still befuddled. That heroine wasn't the type to latch onto quick fads, one of those being Peter Parker being hailed by the media as All Might's successor. Still, she was glad for Peter to work under such a strong hero. Despite that, Nimiri didn't envy him, as working under that hellion is next to impossible. Endo Ward. Nekiri Shizune, a meek and small lady standing only 4 feet tall, stood outside the metal door as she was thankful for the soundproofing going on within. Her raccoon tail bristled at the yells inside, and the shrieking of metal adding along with it didn't help with the reverberations from the sounds of combat going inside. Her employer was making her weekly combat training session per usual, in spite of the fact that she was tardy for her response from UA. The fact she dragged her feet for her response when she forbade Shizune to reply back to Principal Nezu showed how much she wasn't into this upcoming venture, at least at a glance. Then again, ever since All Might and the headmaster of UA called their office about making her take on an intern, she has been in a very sore mood. Good for the citizens of Endo Ward, as that meant any and all villains or criminals in her path was dealt swiftly and harshly, even more so than usual. She then heard the last sound of a crash, making the tiny Tanuki lady sigh as she inputted the code upon the blast door. It opened, and Shizune saw a massive robot the size of a warehouse loom over her, its many red eyes glaring down at her. It was a similar model to the UA Academy's faux villain robots, only purple instead of green, with its hefty arms replaced by hives of tendrils and wires and cables. All over the massive war machine was gashed and dents and torn out circuity and plating. Then the red eyes turned dark as it fell to the side with a crash, the wind washing over the brown-haired woman. She got a good view of the massive training ground before her, and in the center atop a mountain of robotic corpses was her boss, hunched over and panting. "Miss, we got a response from UA a half an hour ago. They have confirmed it with Parker-san and he will be here next Monday, as per UA's internship guidelines," Shizune stated loudly with a loudspeaker she pulled out behind her. The woman standing atop the mountain of metal looked down, her white hair hanging down past her bottom and to the back of her thighs. Her bronze skin ripped and toned with muscle as dark purple long stockings hung tightly to her lower legs. At her feet, metallic guards smoked and had oil and grime. In fact, she was covered in it, as well as metal scraps. She turned, her red eyes gazing down upon her with an unamused glance, like a child being forced to go to dinner and eating nothing but broccoli. Her tall lapine ears twitched as the rabbit hero Merco stood up tall, displaying the golden crescent moon atop of her leotard. "So, the brat's coming here soon, huh? Shit. Still can't believe that All Might pulled my favor for this." Yuzajiyama Rumi cursed as she reached down to her temporary utility belt, grabbing a water thermos and pouring all over her face. Being forced to watch over him. Fucking embarrassment. Shizune winced lightly as she saw Merco hop up from atop the mountain and land beside her. To be fair, we have his transcripts and the glowing reports from his teachers, and I don't give a shit what those pencil pushers think or what book smarts translates to. Merco growled, looking down. "Nakiri, you know as well as I do that that kid is a clown. Letting his powers go to waste like that." She raved as she stood up, stretching and making her joints creak as she began to make final exercises from her workout. So many blown opportunities when he could have ended so many fights in an instant. One hit to the sugar kid, he's out like a light. He allowed Endeavor's brat to get in a cheap hit when he could have taken him out like he did. Shizune smiled behind her wide glasses, adjusting them as she heard the bronze woman rave and rant. As the secretary for the rabbit hero, she's known her all of her life, and to hear the proclaimed lone killer rabbit of Endo say such things when she detests working with others. Then again, she gave a similar rant when she came back from her duty bodyguarding the sports festival. "Well, we will need to buy the right furniture to give him the proper accommodations, as All Might did say that he will be staying with us for 2 weeks. Don't fucking remind me," Merco muttered as she split her legs, her muscles tensing. "I'll leave that stuff to you, Nakiri. You have a better eye for homemaking than me after all." "I'll do my best, Merco-san." Shizune bowed and beamed. "Shall I order the clean-up drones to begin?" "Yeah, might as well." Rumi sighed as she stood up, stretching her arms as the slightly taller woman walked ahead of the tanuki, her bunny tail twitching in conjunction with her ears. Of all damn times to take in a lousy brat, even if he does have promise. She then got a big demonic grin. "So, the world is calling him the second coming of All Might, huh? That brat is nowhere near All Might's level as a hero. He can handle anything on his own if he put his mind it. Yet Parker had to be bailed so many damn times during that flag war or whatever, and when he fought that Shiozako girl." "Shiozaki Merco-san," Shizune corrected as she followed her boss out of the stadium-sized training facility, closing the blast doors and inputting commands on the keypad beside it. "That should get the clean-up drones working through the night." "Whatever, either way." Merco grinned darkly. "I owe All Might a favor regardless, and I never leave a debt unpaid. So if he wants me to take this brat under my wing, fine, I'll leave him in the dust." She walked down the hallway of their agency and eyed the bathrooms, "and show him what it means to be a real hero." "I'm sure you will, Merco-san." Shizune agreed as she allowed her boss to enter the bathroom area. With a light light, she turned, and saw many grimy and dirty footprints from Merco's rabbit feet gear. The tanuki woman rolled her eyes, but smiled as she got out her phone, starting up the cleanup droids as Merco started up her shower. "Well, I better start organizing Peter Parker's room," she stated as she walked forward. "Things are going to get really interesting from here. Someone's in a good mood." Pony felt her cheeks warm as her green-haired classmate's smile grew even wider. She looked as though she was the cat that had caught the canary. The American did her best to look as innocent and inconspicuous as she could in the face of that amused gaze. From her friend's light chuckling, it didn't do much to dissuade her. "You finally asked Bug Boy out?" Setsuna asked as she wrapped her arm around her friend's shoulders. Pony could feel another blush rise up her neckline, and her eyes desperately flickered across the classroom, hoping and praying that everyone else had something better to do with their time. She knew that keeping her crush on Peter hidden was a lost cause. Thankfully, the only one who seemed to be paying any attention to them was Kendo, who was giving her a slight frown that she couldn't quite decipher. Arachnid, she blurted out. Setsuna blinked. Sorry. A wave of embarrassment washed over her. Spiders are arachnids, not bugs. Right? But don't think I didn't notice how you didn't answer my question, her friend pointed out with a cheeky grin. Pony grumbled as Setsuna tightened her grip, trapping her in place. The blonde glanced towards the clock. It would still take 5 minutes for class to start, and there was no way that she would be able to hold off Setsuna's questioning for that long. She would keep on needling until she managed to dig something up. Her friend was tenacious like that, though. Telling Setsuna would keep her from blurting it out to the rest of the class. The young American could easily imagine her friend doing something like that to break her defiance and embarrass her. The thought of that happening made a whole new wave of anxiety pass through her. Trying to keep her question a secret from Peter when someone like Monoma was her classmate would be all but impossible. Not yet, she quietly admitted. She had come close this morning, well scratch that. She had been trying since after the sports festival. Unfortunately, there always seemed to be something coming up between the two of them. The project that he had been working on was finally finished, and all the publicity that he was getting, that they were both getting, had eaten up their time. She could have asked him over the phone. But that just felt impersonal. The teen knew she could have tried to ask him this morning, but he had been distracted, and she didn't want the weight of a possible no pushing down on her for the rest of the day. Better that it happened at the end of the day when she could go home and eat a few dozen apples to ease her pain. Plus she really needed to work herself up to this. Really? Setsuna asked with a raised brow. I thought that you would have been all over him by now. Pony felt a sliver of dread pass through her as Setsuna's grin turned positively predatory. If you don't snatch him up soon, someone's going to ask out Mr. Popular. Have you seen his fan pages yet? Pony blanched. Don't remind me. So many fanfics. She hadn't dared look at the ones about her. I'm asking him after school, she murmured. It felt silly being so worked up about this. She was training to be a pro hero, to fight against villains and save lives. She had fought on international television and hadn't felt this nervous. Yet the thought of asking Peter out still gave her butterflies. Peter was an amazing friend. And she didn't want to ruin that. Whatever his answer was, it wouldn't change her opinion about him, but the fear of how it would change his opinion of her lurked in the back of her mind. Mom had been right when she said he didn't seem like someone who would let something like that get in the way of a friendship. But it was still a genuine fear. How are you going to ask him? Pony blinked. What do you mean? I mean, Setsuna's grin did little to ease her nerves. You could just be boring and ask him out like any regular old person. Or, I don't think I'm going to like this. You could grab him by the shoulders and not confess your heart out. I mean, and then give him a big kiss. Setsuna. Pony all but shrieked, her cheeks so red they could have been replaced by tomatoes. A few of her other classmates glanced towards her, but nobody questioned her sudden outburst. If there was one positive thing about Setsuna's teasing was that she did it to everyone. They were probably just waving it off as some joke she had made and not Pony talking about spilling her heart out to her crush. I wasn't going to do that. But you're thinking about it now. Maybe. From Setsuna's surprised blink, she hadn't been expecting that answer. Pony wasn't going to lie and say that the idea wasn't appealing on some level, but it was the kind of trashy romance move that belonged in cliché novels. Plus, the mere thought of attempting something like that left her feeling somewhat lightheaded. She didn't have the confidence for that. You're serious about this, aren't you? Why yeah, Pony said, leaning back at the uncharacteristically serious look her friend was giving her. The girl was usually all smiles and laughs, but right now, her expression might as well have been carved from stone as she searched for something. I mean he's a really good friend, and I like him. And Pony, lots of people like Peter. I like him because he's good eye candy and fun to tease, but I'm not really serious about asking him out. I'm not going to say no if he asked, but I'm not going to go after him while others are chasing him. That support girl likes him because he can keep up with her brain. Not too sure she thinks about him any other way. But you. Pony leaned back as her friend leaned in. You really have feelings for him, don't you? Yes, was all she could say. Her voice small and weak. Pony. She had never had that many friends growing up. Living on the family ranch left her rather isolated from the rest of the community, and her bovine, equine quirk had gotten her bullied more than once. Coming to Japan had been even worse, trapping her in a foreign land where she barely spoke the language and often looked down on for her American heritage and cultural oddities. It had been hard. Then Peter had shown up. She didn't want to think about what would have happened to her if the friendly New Yorker hadn't approached her during their shared language class. She probably wouldn't have been nearly as confident in her own abilities if he hadn't been there, assuring her that she was doing well, that she wasn't screwing up. He had helped push back that self-doubt that had tripped her up so many times before and helped her simply be herself. Peter had been friendly to her when nobody else had. She couldn't help but admire his reasons for wanting to be a hero, for seeing every problem no matter how small of seemingly insignificant worthy of his time. Others might have called it foolish to spend so much time with mundane things when villains roam the streets. But weren't heroes supposed to be more than just pummeling bad guys? Weren't heroes supposed to inspire the people they defended? He inspired her. So, how are you going to ask him? Setsuna asked, leaning back in her seat. Ask who what? Pony blinked as Kendo approached them, her questioning gaze washing over them both. A quick glance revealed that nobody else had bothered to join in, which was a relief. Besides, Kendo had been a massive help in training and a source of advice for the whole class. Surely she would know something that could help. Pony here is going to ask out the next All Might, Setsuna said with a slight snicker. Pony couldn't help but groan a little. She knew how little Peter liked that nickname, no matter how deserving of it he was. Kendo's gaze sharpened, and the blonde shivered a little under the intensity of the scrutiny. Pony ... Are you sure this is something you want to do? Her class president asked, arms crossed and face impassive. There was something about the way she asked the question that struck a nerve, like she was being judged poorly for her choice. Yes, she intoned, with perhaps just a tad more force than necessary. Kendo held up her hands in surrender. I didn't mean to imply anything ... but being a hero is hard work and doesn't leave much time for a relationship. I'm just thinking that you should focus on being the best you can instead of trying to impress a single boy. The most worthwhile things in life are the most difficult to accomplish, Pony said, borrowing a phrase that she had heard Dad use many times over the years. She knew that he had started his relationship with Mom back when he was in the prime of his career, and he had made it work. It was true that heroing might get in the way of a relationship and vice versa, but to give it up because it was a little difficult. Heroes were supposed to face insurmountable odds and come out on top. Why would this be any different? I'm going to ask him. Nothing's going to change that, Pony said with as much conviction as she could muster. The blonde could feel the surprise wash over the two girls, which wasn't that shocking. She knew that she wasn't what someone would call a particularly forceful person, but this wasn't something she was going to back down on. Well, Kendo looked almost lost, a far cry from her usual innate self-confidence. I suppose if you're serious about this ... be yourself. But make sure that you're understood on how you're asking him out. Parker's the kind of guy you need to hit over the head with a 2x4 to get your intentions across. Pony wanted to defend Peter ... but she couldn't help but flash back to the time she had tried to do things with him. Maybe Kendo's observation wasn't unwarranted. Kendo and Setsuna started to debate about the best methods to tell Peter about her feelings, though Setsuna's were far more raunchy than she was comfortable thinking about. Instead, she let the two voices fade into the background as she solidified her resolve. Okay, I just gotta tell Peter how I feel about him without choking up or getting cold feet. Pony glanced towards the clock. Barely 2 minutes had passed since this conversation had started. ... This was going to be a long school day. How are we looking? Peter asked, setting down the smoldering pen. All around him, the monitors that made up the support class office were alive. A million different calculations flashed across the screens before they all came together in the familiar round symbol. Rudimentary tests are correct, the AI voiced. After final calibrations, we should be able to house my unit for the extended periods like you wished. Current battery life? Peter asked, looking over the finished creation. On the table in front of him, the wired and finished replica of his old mask stared back up at him. The circuitry was on another level than what he was used to. Half the design choices that went into this thing would have never even occurred to him. Thankfully, Peter had a friend that was literally packed with blueprints just waiting to be used. I estimate that you'll be able to push the battery life for 173 continuous hours, so long as you don't overcharge the displays. Got it. Picking up the mask, Peter gently placed it within the automated stitching unit. A big machine, made to fix up the little tears in whatever costume that the support students were looking for. Normally, you'd have to upload a schematic of what your suit looked like, the colors that made up the designs, even the stitching pattern desired. It took forever if you didn't have a friend that could upload all of that information in an instant. The second he pressed the start button, the arms went to work, covering up the circuitry and bringing back that familiar red and black. Before you ask, it'll take all night sadly. None of these are up to par with typical Stark Industries level machinery, Karen said. It's not too bad, Peter replied, putting in his earpiece and hefted his bag. A little waiting never hurt anyone. I can state 17 examples of waiting that did hurt people, the AI spoke. But before that, you received an email 2 minutes ago. Your train tickets to Endo have arrived. Peter felt mixed about that. On one hand, he was one step closer to his internship and serving out his punishment. On the other, he had absolutely no idea who Merco was. All that he could really find from a quick search was that she was the number 7 ranked hero in Japan, with a theme revolving around rabbits and a lot of martial arts. She was also incredibly powerful and on the go a lot. Maybe he'd be able to catch Midori before he headed off to his internship tomorrow. After all, the green-haired boy probably had more information on Merco than her website did. Also, Yu says that she'll be running late tonight, so you'll have to take the train home. Peter cocked an eyebrow. Did she say why she was held up? Hanging out with a friend, Karen admitted as Peter stepped out of the studio, the sun beginning to set as its rays peered in from the windows. Hey Peter, the American snapped his head around, blinking as Pony bounded up to him. Oh right, they had agreed to talk. All that work must have messed something up in his head for him to forget. From the looks of things, you're going to be held up too. Peter rolled his eyes. Karen, please. Hey Pony, wanna have that talk? I'm free, he said in English. The blonde girl perked up. Yes, but is the support room empty? Peter nodded his head. Great, could we talk in there? His fellow American asked. This is. She paused, looking to the side as she blushed lightly. Kinda personal. Peter blinked. Sure. Leading the way, Peter tossed his bag on an empty seat while Pony slowly walked around, taking in the sights of the support room. Go get him, Tiger, Karen said, and Peter resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Peter shot a look at his phone, quickly taking out his earbud as Pony fiddled with a circuit board. Normally, this was the part where someone would say something, but the two of them quickly lapsed into silence. Peter tapped the desk. Pony looked out the window. Neither so much as coughed. So, Peter started, what do you want to talk about? Pony perked up, surprised, like she wasn't expecting the question. She took a deep breath and continued wandering around, hands clasped in front of her as her hooves clopped against the ground. Yeah, well, I don't really know how to say this, she admitted in English. Peter nodded slowly, but things weren't adding up. Pony shuffled her hoof feet, had her hands behind her back, and every time that she so much as looked at him her eyes darted away. Say what? Talk to me. Pony looked at him, that redness growing before she took a deep breath. Well, then there's only one way to say this. Say what? That's what Peter wanted to ask, but the words died in his throat as Pony walked up to him, slamming her hands on his work desk. Peter jerked back, but Pony kept going forward until they were only a few inches apart. The blush had utterly engulfed her face, and Peter swore that even her horns were embarrassed. I like you. What? Oh, lot. Peter didn't know what to say to that. Pony stared at him, waiting for an answer, but his brain was shot. 1,000 calculations and stupid jokes that usually floated around were completely silent for the first time in his life. So he didn't think, he had to work on instinct. Aw, thanks. Instinct's bad. Pony blinked and Peter quickly threw his hands up. Okay, that's not what I'm supposed to say. He stammered, this is like super important and deep and personal, and I should be waiting for you to explain yourself because I know you and you don't just say stuff like that and I'm rambling because usually the I like you comes from me and I should shut up, shouldn't I? Peter's shoulders deflated as he clamped his mouth shut. Please, Pony said, finally turning away. This is hard enough without all that you know. Yeah, I mean, Peter stopped, quickly clearing his throat. You were saying. I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying. Pony spat out, her face somehow getting redder as she shook her head. The point is, Peter. She paused, ramrod stiff, taking a deep breath. We've been friends for over a year now. Her blue eyes shifted to the floor as she struggled to find the words. And you've been the best friend I could ever ask for. Ever since we came here, me from Texas, you from New York. She tugged at her arm. I'm ramblin'. She shook her head, patting her cheeks before she took a deep breath. You have supported me through and through ever since we got here to Japan. If I had never met you, I don't think I would be at the spot where I am today. Pony let out a soft laugh, and she looked up, beaming, her big blue eyes and how they shimmered. I want something more, why you know. Peter's heart was tight, a lump forming in his throat as he could only hear his own heartbeat and the dull humming of the machines and computers. Not exactly the ideal scene for a love confession. So, you want to be more than friends? Peter asked, biting his lip as Pony nodded. Yeah, she reached out, her hand taking his as the American boy seemed to flinch at the contact. Peter's mouth was agog as he blinked rapidly, letting out a laugh. I mean, wow, Luo. Peter smiled as he ran his hands down his face. Where, I mean, Dan. He took a deep breath, looking to the ceiling as the shorter horned girl stared at him with waiting eyes, his heart aflutter. Pony, The American paused, trying to find the words. There was a part of him that wanted to say yes, to accept her feelings, to embrace her and twirl her around, to give her the joy and love she wanted. But in truth, he didn't feel that way. He just didn't. She was his friend. He swallowed, taking a deep breath. Pony, how do you even say this? Just looking at her and thinking the words made him feel like an ass. But he wouldn't want to get strung along if he were in her shoes, right? But I don't feel the same way. I'm sorry. He met Pony's gaze, and the girl visibly winced, almost as soon as she heard the word but come out of his mouth, almost wilting right in front of him. Oh, she said, her voice weak. She looked like she'd been stabbed, and Peter felt like an ass. A colossal one. Pony, you're one of my best friends. I don't want to. So it's a no then. She interrupted, and the little smile that came over her features was downright heartbreaking. He cringed. He was definitely an ass. They lapsed into an awkward, tense silence, and Peter saw Pony's fists trembling where she stood, heard the hitch of her breath before she took a slow, deep inhale and seemed to gather herself before pulling her eyes away from the floor and looking at him again. I can't just ask you to forget what I just said. You don't have to, he answered quickly. You aren't the problem here. If anything, I'm the issue. Anyone who says no to you is an idiot. Like, you're amazing and strong and smart, and that brought out a laugh, though it was a tremulous thing. Painful even. It's okay, Pete. I'm a big girl. Her smile was wide. Too wide. Yeah, Pony spoke out, shaking her head. We're heroes in training after all. Honestly, looking back, it was kind of a bad idea to ask you like this, with internships coming up, finals. The whole kit and caboodle. Peter bit his lip. Pony, she reached for her bag, grabbing it and hoisting it over her shoulder before stepping towards the door, not even looking his way. I have to go. I was in a bit of a rush to catch the bus before I came and I don't want to be late. Her voice was soft, low. He stood up. The words caught in his throat as he wondered if trying to keep talking would just make things worse or if he could somehow heal the hurt he'd caused. He reached a hand out. Before he could decide, the decision was taken completely out of his hands as Pony opened the door and left. Fast, given the clopping of her hooves against the floor. He could hear the walking clops pick up faster in pace before they faded away. Considering everything, I think you handled that as best you could. Karen chimed in from the surrounding systems. Peter sighed, leaning against the wall as he looked up. Calculate fastest route home, he murmured, walking out of the studio and hoping beyond hope that it wasn't as long as he remembered. Do you want to talk about? No. Peter cut her off via her earpiece as he prepared to walk home, leaving UA. Yagi Toshinori took a deep breath, feeling the intake of air stretch his skinny frame as he sat in the back of the car. The driver Tsukachi had recommended, Nagamasa Hiro, was very professional, a fact Toshinori was grateful for right now. Not needing to focus on keeping his muscle form allowed him time to relax, physically, which left him plenty of free time to think. Upon first witnessing Toshinori's transformation into All Might, the man had gaped for a moment. His eyebrows shot up into his hairline before he composed himself, straightening out his suit and proceeding as if nothing was amiss. Normally Tsukachi would handle the driving, but he couldn't as he was busy with an investigation of some kind. Right now Toshinori's thoughts were orbiting around two things. The internships, namely the internships of both his chosen successor young Midoriya and young Parker, whose recent lapse in judgment Toshinori considered to be a personal failure on his part. He was his teacher, and he'd let that kind of poisonous resentment languish inside his student. He should have been more observant, should have seen the signs, should have talked to Aizawa. A part of him knew it was illogical. Rivalry and competition birthed out the best in all of people, drove them to become better no matter what. So what if some kids disliked each other and pushed one another? Kids will be kids. The other part that had driven him to become the symbol of peace in the beginning told the first part to shut up and accept the deserved rebuke. As for young Midoriya, he couldn't fault the boy for accepting Ed Shot's offer. Not only did the boy not know of Gran Torino's very existence, but he also deserved the recognition of interning under such a prestigious and high-ranked hero. He would learn much under Kamihara, no doubt on that. But there was a niggling feeling that he had to do a little more, go a little further. He hadn't done right by any of his students through his negligence. The skeletal man let out a sigh as he slumped in his seat. Being a teacher was hard. How did Nana make it look so easy? The car pulled to a stop at an intersection, and Toshinori felt his body rock lightly with the motion. Just a few blocks now, better puff himself up so. The symbol of peace was brought up short as the very person he was trying to look for stepped out of a tea house. Surprised, Toshinori found himself pressing his skeletal face against the glass, as though proximity would deny what he was seeing. Nope. That was definitely Ed Shot waving away a barista with a smoking hot tea, coffee in hand. His body rapidly growing into the familiar form of the worldwide protector of peace and justice that was All Might. Toshinori stepped out of the car. Unfortunately, he had failed to tell his driver of this development. Headshot, he laughed upon stepping out, fingers gripping the door handle as the ninja hero turned to look at him in clear surprise. Hello, VERYYYY. The car kept going. With a wrenching crash, Toshinori suddenly realized that he was left holding the car door. Said car stopped with a quick screech of its tires as Mr. Nagamasa realized something had gone terribly wrong. Nagamasa stepped out of the car, confused and worried. People stared. Headshot stared, tilting his head. And Toshinori could feel the blush crawling up his neck as he began to sweat nervously. I'm here. After a few seconds of awkward explanation, apologies, wrenching metal into place and twisting it a bit more to make certain it stayed in place until they could get it fixed at the nearest car shop. Some autographs and photo moments, All Might was finally able to talk with his fellow top 10 hero in relative peace, standing on the sidewalk. Well, Headshot shrugged. You clearly wanted to talk to me, so here I am. All Might coughed. Yes, well, as you certainly know, the UA internships are starting today and the student you solicited accepted your offer. Headshot nodded. Ah yes, Midoriya Izuku. Well, the symbol of peace hesitated. How to frame this? I have a bit of a soft spot for young Midoriya, truth be told. I was just wondering what you had planned to cover and expand on during this internship. As his teacher, I thought it would be prudent to know. I was planning to help him with the basics of initiating an engagement, and perhaps, if there is time, some investigative work, but mainly his quirk usage. The ninja hero answered as he closed his visible eye. Actually, if you could facilitate information on how his quirk functions, that would definitely speed up the process considerably. He reopened said eye, although Toshinori had a feeling that his other one hidden behind his gray hair was locked on him. I was planning on the first day or two to break down and dissect the quirk and the way it works. Being able to go through that quickly will certainly allow him to get the most out of his 2 weeks with me. Then we would refine it as we go over lessons and perhaps some detective work. All Might tried to not break out in a cold sweat. Ah yes, the excuse of not knowing anything about Midoriya's quirk, as his scrambling brain quickly realized that he was his teacher, so he should know. B, he had already admitted to having a soft spot for the boy, so that should apply doubly so. And C, even if he didn't know, he would have access to the files too. Well, he chewed on his words, trying to find the best way to spill the beans without tipping over the whole container. From what we can discern, Midoriya's quirk lets him store some energy, but the amount he stores is too much for his body to handle right now. Hence why he breaks his bones. Headshot finished. Interesting. Still, his physical strength and speed is far above most of his classmates, so he must have some control on how much of that stored energy he uses. Very interesting indeed. His mouth curved into a smile under his mask as he stood up. Thank you, All Might, but I believe I should get going. Midoriya will be arriving on the morrow and I want to make sure his accommodations are set. Wait, Toshinori called, his hand going forward to stop the curious ninja hero. Why did you choose him? Out of all the students there, Endeavor's son, Parker, Shizaki, why young Midoriya, if I may ask? Headshot stared at him for a long, interminable moment. He chuckled lightly. Surely you didn't think you're the only one that can have a soft spot for someone who can become a hero too, All Might. Yagi went perfectly still. Headshot's revealed eye curved into a smile. I really should get going now. And you look like you have a door to go fix. Toshinori turned, looking at the barely held together door before he looked back, and Headshot was already gone from the sidewalk. As soon as they were a block or two away from the site of his conversation with Headshot, Yagi allowed himself to deflate with a relieved sigh, the pinstripe suit once more hanging off his skeletal frame. Slowly, the window separating him from Nagamasa began to roll itself down, and Yagi winced as he met Nagamasa's eyes through the rearview mirror. You owe me a door, Yagi-san. All Might coughed into his hand as he felt the embarrassment heat up his face again. Sorry, Nagamasa-san. My agency will cover the expenses. HNN. As if on cue, the car turned a corner and struck a pothole, the movement making the metal groan and shift with a lurch that let the door dangerously rock before settling down. With a leery eye at the door, Toshinori turned his eyes back to Nagamasa with a cringe as the man rolled the window back up. The number one hero sighed. That goes for the tires too. That was a good chunk of change down the drain. Toshinori turned to look out of the window, watching the people going about their day. It was nice seeing people at peace. It was a reminder of what he'd managed to accomplish, what he'd fought so hard for the last few decades. Endo Ward was several minutes away, and so Toshinori took to fiddling with his phone. The news cycle had finally moved on from the sports festival by and large, but still there were pictures here and there, mainly of the third-year students who were slated to graduate soon and be the latest generation of heroes to the world. Many eyes were on UA. Big Three, each of whom had given outstanding performances in their own rights and ended in the top 3 spots in the tournament. He wondered what the news would look like in 2 years with young Midoriya about to graduate. Already he'd made a lot of strides in mastering One for All. In another 2 years, or even one, who knew what he'd achieve? The successors were always greater than their predecessors. Scrolling through the various tabs and social media notifications, Toshinori let his mind wander as the noise of the car and even the creaky door beside him faded from his mind. Finally, as he noted through his peripheral vision Nagamasa pulling off the exit ramp, Toshinori pried himself away from the little screen and pay attention to his surroundings again. Finally, he could see the building coming up, just a block away. Puffing himself up to the form of the indomitable All Might, Toshinori smiled as Nagamasa pulled up to the curb. Right before them was what looked like a warehouse in front of a giant domed stadium. Carefully opening up the last remaining door, Toshinori stepped out of the car, walking over to Nagamasa's door and tapping on the window. Rolling it down, he told his relatively new driver, 10 minutes tops. Nodding once, Nagamasa shifted the car into drive and headed off to find a parking spot elsewhere. Taking a breath, not entirely dissimilar to stealing his nerves when he was gonna step into a fight, Toshinori made his way into the agency. He opened the door. "Hello, for I am here." His booming voice startled the small auburn-haired secretary quite spectacularly. She jumped in her seat, a file of some kind jumping off of her fingertips before her hands scrambled to catch it. All Might. Her ears were perked up, and her bushy raccoon-like tail was stiff and erect. The distinct sound of weights and dumbbells hitting the floor echoed through the room before he saw Merco, at the lip of a doorway in a sports bra and sweatpants, gleaming in sweat. "The heck are you doing here?" the rabbit hero asked, not even caring that the world's greatest hero is in her front lobby. "Haha, I just came to talk to you about young Parker." Uzujiyama's eye twitched as her ears folded. "I already promised that I'd do it," she said with a scowl. "I don't need you hovering over my shoulder about it like some mother hen." His blue eyes found her red ones. "You promised you'd do it, but you never promised to do the best you could while doing it." The dark-skinned woman rolled her eyes before she marched over to him, looking cross as she placed her arms on her hips. "If you don't trust me to do it right, then why ask? I sure as hell have better things to do than explain myself in the middle of my training. Don't misunderstand me." He held up his hands in a placating gesture before putting them at his hips. "I know that once you promise to do something, you'll see it through. That is the kind of woman you are. But you have no connection to young Parker, and no reason to give the extra effort in something you didn't even wish to do in the first place. I would not blame you given your responsibilities. A favor to me isn't a priority. I'm just here to ask you to give the boy a bit more of a chance, and a bit more of your time and effort than what's strictly necessary. And I know he will meet even your high standards." His trademark smile widened and shone brightly. "I could just lie," she said. "Tell you what you want to hear." He smiled. "Now that I know you wouldn't do." For a long moment, Merco stared at him before she huffed. "TCH, you're lucky I like you." "Indeed." The symbol of peace laughed. "I've seen what you do to the people you don't like." "Mr. All Might, sir." The tanuki secretary that was a head shorter than the already short Merco ran up with a glass of water. "Some water? Why thank you, young miss. Don't mind if I do." He beamed as he bent down, taking it as he began to drink. Uzujiyama crossed her arms over her full bosom and quirked an eye at him. "So is this brat your secret American love child or something like the internet says?" Toshinori spat out the water. Thankfully the liquid arced over Merco's head as he choked. "What?" Merco shrugged. "Figured I'd ask. American boy with super strength and you pulling all the strings to get him into UA. The same year you begin teaching, even coming all the way out here to Endo all but singing his praises." She looked up at the blonde titan of a man with an inquiring eye. "Internet finally dig up something real on you, or is it more tabloid BS?" The latter. He could see the logic for the connection, but good lord, he hadn't been back in the States in almost 20 years. Sheer mathematics would make it impossible. Couldn't people see that? Then again, Parker is 15 to 16 years of age. He can see why people can make such a connection, at least the conspiracy-minded ones. He realized that he had stated the last part aloud when Merco smirked. "Don't let your math and logic get in the way of a good story now, All Might. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got my training to get back to." She rolled her head a little. "Going on a patrol for the next few days across central Japan before coming back here." She then turned around, waving back as she walked towards the inside of the building. Well, he would have to take her at her word. All Might said his goodbye to the secretary and returned to the car. The last few days had been a blur for Bakugou Katsuki. Go to school, eat, head back, go to his room, lie in bed, sleep, repeat. That damn Deku kept to his word, finally, and left him alone. Thank God. Right now Katsuki wanted the week to be done. Aizawa said that in the next few days their class would be wrapping up some school stuff and preparing to go to internships. Well, most of them would be. Parker, Deku, everyone. He hadn't even bothered to fill out the application forms. What was even the point anymore? Who would want a loser like him anyway? So he ignored them. He continued to look over his phone as he lay down in bed after a day at school. Looking over a news article on his phone made him breathe out his nose. The next generation of heroes. The next All Might waiting in the wings. Or All Mights. What we know so far of the foreign exchange ace freshman student Peter Parker, and the shining senior superstars Tagata Mirio, Amajiki Tamaki, and Hato Nejire. Your name isn't on there. You're a fucking footnote now, Katsuki thought as he closed his eyes. Come on, come on. Taking a deep breath he opened them again, staring at his palms and coaxing the sweat to come to the surface of his skin. Nothing. The sweat didn't ignite and Katsuki just stared at his open palm, eyes hollow. Why did he pick UA? Why didn't he go to Shiketsu or Ketsubatsu? Why did he have to aim so high that he'd burned? He'd never be the strongest, not with Todoroki there, or fucking Deku, and especially Parker and his defeat in front of the whole world to see. Why did you save me, All Might? Why? He gritted out, gripping the sheets. A knocking came at his door before he would wallow deeper, and Katsuki lifted his head. I'll come down at dinner, he said sternly and loud, turning over and facing away from the door. Katsuki, it was Mom as she opened the door. You have a guest. Come on. Katsuki breathed out his nose as he looked back at the mother with whom he shared his features. The red-eyed blonde woman was frowning, but he could see those eyes of sympathy gazing at him. More pity. Who is it? He reiterated dryly as he rolled out of bed, still in his school uniform. Doesn't matter who it is. He came just now and he wants to talk to you. So stop being rude and get downstairs, Mitsuki said with crossed arms over her bosom. Come on, don't keep him waiting. I'm coming, I'm coming. Katsuki groused as he stormed out, walking past Mitsuki as his eyes remained glued to the floor. Who would bother coming here? Well, came a deep voice, a voice Katsuki didn't recognize except over the news. His head rose up as he walked down the stairs. You really are in bad shape, aren't you? He was tall, massive even as he sat on the couch, dressed in a suit and an orca-themed cape. Sakamoto Kyugo, gang orca, sat there with his father Masaru sitting across from him. The brown-haired man's eyes brightened at the sight of his only son as he gestured for Katsuki to sit beside him. Gang orca, Katsuki breathed, eyes wide. On the coffee table in front of him was his hero sheet that he had forgotten to sign. The killer whale hero gestured to the couch. Please, have a seat. The boy blinked, not sure how to react. After a moment his legs began to move, almost robotically if you were honest, sitting down beside his father shortly before the boy felt his mother sit next to him. You never filled out your hero internship form. Orca raised an eyebrow, whatever a whale's eyebrow could be called. I wonder why. Wait, you haven't filled that out, Katsuki? Mitsuki asked surprised, looking down at her son. The blonde wilted, looking at the floor. Doesn't matter. He shrugged, staring at their current guest. He could feel his mother's whole body tense, like a bowstring being pulled taut, ready to spring and let loose. Alright, enough is enough with this moping bullshit. No, we tried it your way in giving him space. She hollered at her husband seated across from her, who shrunk under her voice. And he's on a goddamn. Somehow, Gang Orca's webbed hand reaching forwards and lifting the collection of the application forms made enough sound to cut over his mother's extremely loud voice. Holding the stack in hand, the hero cleared his throat. Given that he has no protests one way or the other, if the two of you would consent, I will accept his internship application. Well, Masaru said, grateful to turn away for a moment from his wife's gritted teeth and barely held back rage as he bowed in respect. We're grateful for this attention, and the opportunity and will. What's the catch? Mitsuki cut in flatly as her husband winced. Not everyone, much less a pro hero, shows up for a personal house call, especially when their email went ignored. Indeed they don't, Sakamoto answered with a bobbing nod of his head. A friend asked. I answered, it's quite simple. Katsuki scoffed, bringing the attention of the three adults right back to him. TCH, so you don't even want me for me, just because somebody asked you to take on the charity case. Katsuki, you're nada. Before the words could come out of his father's mouth, Gang Orca stood up from his seat, and for the first time Bakugou could appreciate just how massive the hero was. He was taller than All Might. Charity is for the weak and slothful, and I have neither the time nor inclination to reward either, even for friends who ask nicely. Gang Orca growled. You aren't that worthless. You finished as the runner-up in the sports festival, and your grades have you at the top percentile of your grade. But I will not coddle you and soothe your hurt feelings. He glared down lightly. With a turn of his head, the hero nodded once to both of his parents. The offer is on the table should you accept. If you do, Bakugou-san, I expect you in my agency at 8 a.m. sharp Monday morning. He reached into his suit jacket and placed down his business card. My address is listed here. Since this is a rush job, you'll have to pay for transportation yourself down to Nagasaki should you accept. If you do, my agency will cover for food, room, and board as you work under us. I will not call. I will not chase after your whereabouts after that time on Monday. Show up, or be relegated to where you seem to think you belong. He growled, his red eyes sharp and piercing into the blonde boy. Tatsuki winced, looking away as he closed his eyes, gripping his fists. He didn't deserve it. No one should bother going out of their way. Not for a loser like him. Not for Bakugou. He lifted his head, red eyes looking back into red as Gang Orca looked down at him from the side. Will you choose to lie down and fade into the shadows after one defeat? He turned his head, eyes as hard as steel as he gave him his full attention. Or will you get back up, fight, and become the hero you've always wanted to be? With his words delivered, the killer whale hero bowed deeply once to his mother and then to his father. Ma'am, sir, thank you for your time. And it was all his father could do to get up fast enough to escort him to the door. The next few days flew by in a flash, thankfully, and Peter arrived at Musutafu Station with the rest of Class A, all of them now standing in the courtyard. All right, everyone has their costumes right, Aizawa asked as he inspected his students standing before him, all of them carrying their suitcases, backpacks, and their special cases containing their costumes. Peter looked down at his small one, patting it affectionately as his mask and suit were ready to roll. He did double-checking on it, triple-checking to ensure all systems were green. They were. Good. He closed his eyes and shushed off the kids. Be on your best behavior out there. You're representing UA. You know, you'll be focusing entirely on the hero you are working with over the next 2 weeks. Don't let this opportunity go to waste. Get going and do good. He turned around and walked away, hands in his pockets as Peter sighed. This is gonna be a blast. I can't wait. Hagakure chirped with a wave of her hand. Agreed. Gotta say, couldn't sleep a wink last night in anticipation. Shoji added from one of his arms. I slept like a baby. Then again, helped to get a major workout in. Kirishima grinned, flexing his arm as he saw Takoyami walking ahead of him. Hey man, you headed to Kyushu. It's in the south side of the station. That's where Hawks is located. Oh, my thanks, the bird-headed boy replied. You excited as well? Karen asked in his ear. Peter shrugged. Kind of. I mean, I've worked with heroes before in the past, but I never worked with one as part of a high school curriculum. It's still kinda surreal, you know, Peter replied as he looked up at the various screens and electronic billboards as they displayed various ads from Uebami's fashion items to Wash's appliance advertisement. And no one batted an eye or said some snide comment on collateral damage. That's how it was back in his world with the Avengers ever since New York, and it amplified with DC, and each incident afterward, especially Sokovia. Now there was a Hawkeye on every street corner and a Hulk, Iron Man and Captain America in every town. Indeed, commercial superheroes, with many laws and regulations our world could have used. Either way, I am sure you will be accepted well enough if you keep this pace up, Peter. Appreciate it. Peter replied with a smile as he saw Momo standing in his peripheral vision, head tilted. You on a phone call? She asked in Japanese and the American perked up. Oh, thanks Miss Karen, I'll definitely keep that in mind, Peter said in English with a grin, tapping his earbud. Thankfully the AI understood as he felt a vibration down low and saw a thumbs up icon. Atta girl, was just having a small call with my guidance foreign counselor, laying out plans, all that cool stuff. He replied back in Japanese, a foreign guidance counselor. I am not privy to exchange students and the whole process, so you would know more than I do in that field. The black-haired girl mused as she crossed her arms. So, you're going to Endo Ward, right? That's on the other side of Tokyo. Yep, gonna be a long ride on the train. Peter stretched. Where's Yoyoi Musha at? At that moment, Momo giggled as she placed her fingers over her mouth. Oh, it's Yoroi Musha, Peter-san. She smiled and Peter felt dumb botching a pro-hero's name. Merco. As for Musha-san, he is based in Corisanto Ward, so it is not far, thankfully. I just have to take a bus. I must say though, Peter-san, when I thought about it, you selecting Merco was a smart choice. Really? I know she's a rabbit hero and is super strong. Peter crossed his arms, racking his brain for additional info on her. Oh, and that she isn't around Endo a lot either. Like, she goes cross-country solving and stopping crimes as she goes. Suo, she's like a hitchhiker, Peter suggested, wishing he had looked up more on her. Karen kept quiet for now, since he wasn't sure how to respond to her while in the middle of a conversation. Really, I was considering how your power sets are quite similar in terms of versatility. It is strange though for Merco to send out internship offers. She cupped her chin and thought, I don't follow heroes often, but she is a top 10. But she has no sidekicks in her agency given her vagabond style of heroing. She placed her hands on her hips and then smiled. I guess given your performance that you must have really left an impression on her. Yeah, I bet. Peter looked to the side, knowing why he had to pick her and not others. Granted, he had thousands of emails to comb through, so in a way he was grateful to Principal Nezu and All Might for helping him, but he would have liked to see what other offers he had gotten. I heard Yoroi is in the top 10 too. What do you have planned? Hopefully I can learn many things from him. Heroism tips, combat techniques, quirk refinement hints, and all that may be only the tip of the iceberg. Momo closed her eyes. I have gotten stronger since coming to UA, but I feel that I need to grow stronger still. After all, you have set the bar so high for everyone. She turned back to him, her obsidian eyes shining. I need to step up my game. I know you can. Peter nodded as he pocketed his hands. You're gonna do great, Momo-san. Don't feel that you need to be pressured, just go at your own pace. Life's too short to be rushing things. You don't have to be a top 10 or something like that right off the bat. He shrugged, grinning as he remembered Mr. Stark's words. Well, somewhat. He's paraphrasing. I suppose to put it simply, before I don't make any sense, just be the every hero creator you wanna be. She blinked before she giggled. I appreciate your words. She looked to the ground as she looked deep in thought. Peter, she spoke in English as Peter perked up. I noticed the last few days that you looked a little down. Peter looked away. Damn it, was it that obvious? Is something wrong? Peter took a deep breath, scratching the back of his head. Me and a friend had a disagreement on things. He couldn't just start a rumor mill like this. He already felt like an ass. At school, Pony hasn't even looked at him when they passed by each other a few times. He couldn't blame her. I see, I am sorry to hear that. I hope things improve. You and me both. Peter thought. It's nothing major to worry about, don't sweat over it. He looked back up at her, seeing how other students in class were busy socializing before their trains arrived. He saw Uraraka and Midoriya run off after Ida. Hiya Ace. Peter felt an arm draped around his shoulders as he looked down at the red-headed Kirishima. He grinned at him. Talking about your internships. Ooh, yeah, we were. The brown-haired boy replied. Momo seemed sheepish, looking away. You excited to work under that fourth kind guy? You bet I am. And when I get back I know that I'll be stronger than ever. He gave Peter a challenging look as he pointed at his classmate's chest. When we face off again, I'll be the one who gets the win. You better get in line. I think Sato-kun has a claim already. Momo replied as Ijiru perked up. Oh yeah, you two fought in the tournament round. He punched his open palm with his fist. Then I'll make a claim on his claim and defeat him man to man. Winner gets you. Now that just sounds weird. Is this how rivalries work? Peter asked. Still, 2 weeks for internships. I mean, I like the hero work, but midterms are just a week after this stuff, right? Ijiru changed the subject, looking to the ground. I was really hoping to get some studying in. I'm just scraping by in some of my classes. If it's help with studying, I'm sure we can set something up. Peter suggested, happy to talk more about normal school things rather than rivalries and fight claims. Yeah, I could use some help with math, and the teachers always call on you to fix up an equation me, Kaminari, or Hagakure couldn't get. Ijiru grinned as he bounced on his feet. You're like a math wizard, as expected from Ace, and I need help with normal Japanese and calligraphy. Peter laughed. I mean, I can speak it fine and write normally, but I have some trouble with minor stuff. And history. Boy, did history suck. The history he once knew was literally ancient history, like the 1812 war and the Louisiana Purchase. Then why don't we set up a study group? Momo suggested, beaming. Every day after school we can reconvene at my house and use my family's study. I would be happy to assist. That's awesome. Ijiru beamed as he pumped his fist. Then, now I can sleep easier now with that in mind. He separated himself from Peter. With that, we should focus on our internships for now though. Can't look too far ahead on the road, or else we'll miss the potholes. Get that from a fortune cookie? Peter asked with a grin as the redhead collected his bags. No, my dad told me that. Welp, my train takes off in 10. We better get a move on. See you in the chat and in 2 weeks. Zaru waved as everyone began to go their separate ways. This series of departures left Peter and Momo alone as they looked back at each other. So, study group. Yes. Momo nodded, hands folded in front of her stomach. I think it would be in everyone's best interest for anyone we invite that we split roles. I will handle Japanese, calligraphy, and history, and you can handle math and science. There are 2 science classes, so leave it to me. Peter grinned, offering a hand. We are the class reps. We gotta look after our, well, class. Momo beamed, and Peter felt her soft, silky hand shake his own. Well said. We'll support our classmates. She paused, as if wanting to say something else, a bit of pink on her cheeks. Together in the future. But for now, let's become better heroes. You got it. Peter bowed lightly and turned, collecting his belongings as he saw the black-haired beauty do the same. See you around, Momo-san. Tell me how it's like under MHA. You too. Momo waved, and she left with a light bounce in her step as Peter collected his belongings and walked to the central wing of the station. There he'd get on the train for Endo Ward. Seems you and that girl are quite cordial. Karen mused in his ear. We are class reps. We work together. Peter laughed ruefully. You'll have to tell me in detail on the train then. Will do. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 13. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.